Hey, everybody. We're back. We're here tonight. Good to see you all. We're going to have yet another great late night conversation. Yeah, let's do it.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. We're going to have yet another one of our great late night conversations. So if you are somebody who is here and you're new, the way we do things is first I give my opening remarks. That's whatever it is I plan on talking about. Then from there, we do a roll call where I call you all out as I see you. We find out who's watching. Always a great group of people watching. Then after that, I answer your questions for the rest of the night. Questions can be sent via Rumble Rants. You can cash at me at CalebMoppin22. But the best way to send your questions, which is the most convenient, is buy me a coffee. Boom. You send it via buy me a coffee. Boom. I get them. You can be anonymous. It's a great way to send your questions. And people do it. They go to buy me a coffee. They send their questions. It's a great way to do it. So if you got something you want me to talk about in the second half of the show, I am here. I am at your service to answer your questions. It's always a lot of fun. Occasionally we get something we can't answer, but for the most part, especially if you send it via Buy Me a Coffee, I can answer your questions. Now, as far as announcements, a lot is going on with the Center for Political Innovation. We were just in Detroit. And I'll talk a little bit about that tonight. And we've got, there's basically an important struggle going on that we need to intervene in. And actually, I don't really have announcements, so to speak, tonight because my entire opening remarks is going to be an announcement. We need to talk frankly about what is going on in the country. So the only announcement is if you want to be involved, join the Center for Political Innovation. Go to cpiusa.org and become a dues-paying member. We are the anti-imperialist movement of America. We're doing the work, as you'll hear about in the opening remarks tonight. So become a member, and that's a great way to get involved in carrying out the operations and building the movement that is urgently needed. So on that note, quick reminder, first I give my opening remarks. After that, we do the roll call. Then I answer your questions for the second half of the show. So if you've got something you want me to talk about in the second half of the show, Rumble Rants, Cash App, CalebMoppin22. But the best way to do it is you can buy me a coffee. Send me something to talk about, a question to answer, something to react to in the second half of our program. That's the way we do it. So now I'm going to jump right into it for tonight. A lot of things are developing. It looks like there was just a horrendous shooting at the Labor Day parade here in New York City. At least 2 people have been rushed to the hospital. That's certainly a development. I mean, it's after dark here in New York City, but apparently just before dark, as the Labor Day parade was ending, some people were shot. I don't know what to make of that. That's a developing story. In addition to that, as we know, there are U.S. warships off the coast of Venezuela. And on top of that, in the East, the leaders of the anti-imperialist emerging new economies, the BRICS, are meeting in China. Xi Jinping, Russian President Putin, President Modi of India are there. And the Russian president has given some remarks in China. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization is there to counter imperialism and counter the globalist imperialist system, the British Empire economic order. Very exciting, very, very exciting indeed. And all of that is related to what I'm going to talk about tonight. in my slideshow. I'm very concerned about Venezuela and the fact that the USA may be getting ready to attack Venezuela. That would be absolutely horrendous if it happens. And I hope that, cooler heads prevail, and this is not what the American people voted for. I obviously am very inspired by the new bloc of countries that has emerged to resist the power of Wall Street, and everything I'm hearing out of China is very exciting. And on top of that, the regular occurrence of shootings in the United States is certainly horrendous. And we're going to talk about all of that tonight. All of that kind of fits into what we're talking about tonight. Let's just get into it. There is a fight within the deep state taking place right now, and we must act. We must intervene. And that's what I'm going to talk about tonight in my opening remarks. So, as you all know, a very, very important gathering took place in Alaska. President Trump met with Russian President Putin in Anchorage, Alaska, and that meeting was a huge game changer. It's what the American people voted for. Donald Trump said he would end the war in Ukraine. He said he would do it in 24 hours. He hasn't ended it in 24 hours, but he said he was going to end the war, whereas Kamala Harris promised to continue the war. And Donald Trump won on a platform of saying he would continue to, he would work to end the war, whereas Kamala Harris said she would just keep the war going until Ukraine, quote unquote, won. Donald Trump said he didn't care who won. He wanted the killing to stop. And the meeting that took place in Anchorage, Alaska, points to a lot of great possibilities. And in the aftermath of that meeting, some very important things have happened. One is that John Bolton, the former national security advisor to Donald Trump in his first term, one of the main architects of the U.S. invasion of Iraq, an outspoken neoconservative, had his home raided by the FBI. And it looks like he may be charged for his lies about Russiagate. That is huge. What else happened? Donald Trump, since his meeting in Alaska with Putin, he then met with the president of South Korea at the White House. And at that meeting, he announced that he plans to resume peace talks with North Korea. Now, John Bolton is the guy who wrecked the previous talks with North Korea, you'll remember. He said that Libyan options were on the table, basically threatening the life of Kim Jong-un. John Bolton sabotaged the talks that happened in the previous administration, and he was arrested. And he's had his home raided, and he could be charged, it looks like. And now Trump has announced he wants to continue talks with North Korea. And now Tulsi Gabbard, who is the hope of this country, the director of national intelligence, she is purging the intelligence agencies. And she is stripping the people who pushed the Russiagate hoax, the idea that Trump was working for Putin. She is stripping them of their security clearances. This is a really big deal. MSNBC and the Wall Street Journal are furious about this, absolutely furious about this. And they're trying to make it sound like Tulsi Gabbard is outing CIA operatives, and they are absolutely furious about this. And John Ratcliffe, who is the head of the CIA, is absolutely furious about this. But Tulsi Gabbard is going through the intelligence agencies and all the people that worked for the CIA, that worked for the intelligence agencies, that made up and pushed this lie that Russia interfered in the U.S. elections and rigged the elections for Trump in 2016. She's stripping them of their security clearances. She already revealed the records showing that they lied and that Russiagate wasn't real. Now she is stripping CIA agents who were involved in spreading that of their security clearances. That's very, very big. That's a very, very big deal. In addition to that, Donald Trump is openly labeling the Muslim Brotherhood as domestic terrorists or as foreign terrorist organization. That's a big deal as well. And there are some big possibilities right now. Right now, there is the potential for the war in Ukraine to end. There is the potential for the Bering Sea bridge or tunnel to be constructed, connecting us to the rising new economy in the East. establishing distance from NATO. There is the potential for peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula and peace on the Korean Peninsula, U.S. troops leaving South Korea. But at the same time, there are horrendous threats against Venezuela, which are pretty horrible. This is a crazy, crazy moment. So we need to understand what is taking place. Well, the most important thing to understand is that John Bolton must be prosecuted. You know, as somebody who has worked with people who've been in our prison system, as somebody who maintains a Christian attitude, doesn't seek vengeance, I can't say I want John Bolton to go to jail, but I can say that I would like him to be prosecuted. Why? Because John Bolton is a neoconservative. And as a neoconservative, he believes that regime change wars are necessary, that it is the duty of the United States to overthrow governments around the world. And as a follower of Leo Strauss, he believes that it is okay to lie and deceive the U.S. public to do it. And he did that during the administration of George W. Bush. He cooked up a pack of lies that led the USA to invade Iraq. They said Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, and they didn't. Iraq did not have weapons of mass destruction. They said that Iraq was involved in 9/11. It wasn't. And they lied to the American people. They lied to the world, and they invaded Iraq and killed at least 100,000 people. And Iraq has been devastated ever since. And millions of Iraqis have fled the country as refugees. This is murder. This is murder on a massive scale because he believes that it is the mission of the United States to overthrow governments around the world and spread freedom, and that it's okay to lie in order to carry this out. It's a noble lie because the masses of people are just too stupid, and the philosopher kings must spread freedom. Because of that, he killed hundreds of thousands of people. He's a mass murderer, and he should go to prison for, well, I shouldn't say he should go to prison. Again, I don't want to be a vengeful person, but he should be prosecuted for what he did. In addition to that, more recently, he lied about Russiagate. And he said that Trump, his victory in 2016 was the result of Russia interfering in the U.S. elections. We now know that Russia did not interfere in the U.S. elections. Russia thought that Hillary Clinton would win. They had all kinds of information about Hillary Clinton they could have released and did not. They expected Hillary Clinton to win. They sat on the info they had on her. They knew about her mental illness. They knew about her addictions. They knew about all kinds of stuff, and they sat on it because they expected that she would win. They did not interfere in the elections, and that twice Obama went to the intelligence agencies and asked them if the U.S. Elections were being interfered with by Russia, and twice they said no. And after that, Obama went back to the intelligence agencies and said, I want a different answer. I want a different answer. And this lie, I mean, first of all, it hurt President Trump. It made him look like he was an agent of a foreign power, like he was, he was a puppet of Russia. But it set the stage for a war. This war in Ukraine would not be happening without the Russiagate lie. It wouldn't be happening without the Russiagate lie. You have to remember that. The Russiagate lie made it difficult for Trump politically to meet with Putin. It put Trump in a situation where his entire relationship with Putin was from a position of weakness. Trump said that Russia didn't interfere in the elections. Then he had to take it back. He was afraid. And then, Trump couldn't, increase U.S. trade with Russia. He couldn't lift sanctions. Obama put all kinds of sanctions on Russia for allegedly interfering in the U.S. elections. Well, it turns out that didn't happen, and Obama knew that didn't happen, but those sanctions are still in place to this day. And Trump ended up sending lethal aid to Ukraine, something that he would not have done if he wasn't from a defensive position, accused of being soft on Russia. And then the FBI claimed that the Hunter Biden laptop scandal was Russian propaganda. It wasn't. It wasn't Russian propaganda. It was true. And the New York Times has admitted this. And no one would have ever thought that the Hunter Biden laptop scandal was Russian propaganda if it wasn't for the Russiagate hoax, if we weren't already told, oh, Russia's trying to rig the election. So the FBI went to Facebook, and the FBI went to Twitter, and the FBI went to all of the social media outlets and all the mainstream media outlets and said, don't report on this story that shows Joe Biden is corrupt because of the fact that it's Russian propaganda when they knew it wasn't. All of this flows from Russiagate. And then Joe Biden got into office and Trump was removed in an election that he should have won. Voters said if they had known about the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, they wouldn't have voted for Biden. Regardless, Biden won the election, an election that basically was won because the FBI was spreading Russiagate propaganda. And once Biden got into office, he escalated the threats against Russia, and all of that led to where we are today. This war in Ukraine would not have happened without John Bolton and his cabal of neocons lying and saying that Donald Trump was an agent of Russia, that Russia interfered in the elections. The Russiagate hoax is essential in causing the war in Ukraine right now. So John Bolton should be prosecuted. He and other people in the intelligence agencies conspired to create more tension between the United States and Russia, to escalate the situation in Ukraine. And now the body count has been rising. Hundreds of thousands of people are dead because of John Bolton's lies. He did it in Iraq, and now he did it with regards to Russia. And he and other people in the CIA and in the intelligence agencies lied in order to create a war. And John Bolton being prosecuted would set a precedent that lying to get us into a war is a crime. It's not allowed. The U.S. has lied. The U.S. government has lied for every major war. Every major war starts with a lie. The Gulf War began with the Naria testimony and the little girl crying and saying, "Oh, they're taking babies out of incubators." It was a lie. All right. The bombing of Serbia was a lie, and it started out with claims that they were committing genocide against ethnic Albanians in Kosovo. And the UN has admitted that there was no genocide. There were war crimes on both sides, including atrocities by the CIA and Saudi-backed Kosovo Liberation Army, but there was no genocide. Milosevic did not commit genocide, and that was a lie. And they lied about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. They have lied and lied and lied and lied. And setting a precedent where someone could actually be charged and prosecuted for telling lies that get us into a war and lead to hundreds of thousands of deaths would be a huge victory for the American Constitution over the intelligence apparatus, the shadow government that rules us, right? The neocons, the Zionists, and the CIA and the intelligence agencies don't think that the Constitution applies to them. They think that in their mission to spread freedom all over the world and overthrow and destabilize governments that get in their way, they can do whatever they want. And if John Bolton were actually to face a criminal prosecution for what he did with Russiagate, that would be a huge victory for the working families of America. And you need to remember this, that we are in a moment where, Bush lied about weapons of mass destruction, invaded Iraq, and now he's living comfortably on his ranch in Texas and all of this. But this is the first time that I've heard of where somebody who lied to create a war could actually face consequences for doing so. This could happen, and Tulsi Gabbard is in the process of making it happen. This is big, and that is what you need to understand. That is a huge thing, and that is why the so-called left and the so-called peace movement joining the Trump derangement hysteria right now is absolutely criminal. So at the same time that we're seeing a moment where the neocon cabal that has pushed us into wars, the former Trotskyites, the followers of Leo Strauss, the ultra-Zionists that have gotten us into wars, where they're actually facing pushback, where there's actually potential for ending the war in Ukraine, establishing better relations with Russia, building the Bering Strait Bridge. All of this stuff is in the moment. What has happened? The socialist movement, the communist groups have decided to align themselves with the Muslim Brotherhood. Let that sink in for a moment. Now, that sounds crazy. What are you talking about, Caleb? This sounds like some kind of right-wing podcast. You're talking about the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is a religious organization that was formed in Egypt in the 1920s by a cleric who visited the United States. He was a Muslim, and he visited the United States, and he loved the United States. And he said that America is more Muslim than the Arab countries, because in America, we pave our roads. In America, we have income tax. In America, we're more Muslim than the Western countries. And his main opposition, his main enemy was communism, because communism was atheistic, and communism sought to build a planned economy. And the Muslim Brotherhood is a group of what they call westernized Sunni Muslims who believe in free market capitalism and also think that Arab nationalism and communism is the main threat. And they were used by the United States in the 1950s. The USA started funding them in Egypt to start working against Abdel Nasser, the Arab socialist leader of Egypt. And it's a big wing of Islam in the Middle East. And right now, the Turkish government is led by Erdogan, who comes out of the Muslim Brotherhood tradition. The government of Qatar and the Al Jazeera TV network come out of this tradition. And for decades, the Muslim Brotherhood, these westernized Sunni Muslims who love free market capitalism, they have been used by the United States to destabilize the Middle East. And they waged uprisings in Syria to try and bring down the Syrian government. They tried to overthrow Gaddafi, and they are a group of terrorists and extremists who are useful to the United States because of the fact that they are in favor of free market capitalism, and they oppose Arab nationalism. They oppose Islamic socialism. They oppose Shia Muslims. They hate Shia Muslims. They call them Shia apostates. They hate Iran. And they want to spread free trade and free market capitalism all throughout the Middle East. They're a group of anti-communist extremists, and they tend to be funded by the merchant class, right? In the Middle Eastern countries, the capitalists tend to divide. You'd have some capitalists that are tied in with the state and the military, and they're the ones that tended to back Arab nationalism and favor an alliance with the Soviet Union. And then you have a layer of merchants and business owners that tend to believe in the free market and tend to be very anti-communist and ultra-religious, and they align with the United States, right? Yes, Egypt built the Aswan Dam in coordination with the Soviet Union, the biggest electrical facility in the Middle East, wiped out illiteracy and electrified all of Egypt, and the Muslim Brotherhood was used to oppose it. The Muslim Brotherhood is a pro-imperialist grouping, and I saw this after the Egyptian coup. The socialist group I was in met with the Muslim Brotherhood lawyers in New York City, and they openly told us, we want Egypt to be just like America. That is what we want. That's what they want. And you talk to the Muslim Brotherhood, they are the most pro-imperialist, anti-communist, anti-Russia, anti-China, anti-Iran people. However, they are Muslims, and they happen to oppose Israel, just like all Muslims do. And actually, Hamas began as the Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine, because the Palestinian resistance was funded by the Soviet Union. The Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine was a Marxist-Leninist organization. The Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine was a Marxist-Leninist group. Yasser Arafat was trained and funded by the various Arab nationalist and Marxist governments. Because of that, Israel helped create Hamas, because Hamas was the Palestinian wing of the Muslim Brotherhood, and they're so anti-communist and so free market, and they wanted to use the Muslim Brotherhood against the Palestinian resistance. Well, now Hamas is the leader of the Palestinian resistance. And the Muslim Brotherhood is completely pro-imperialist, and they were essential. They were essential in the Arab Spring. You remember the Arab Spring. 2011, Barack Hussein Obama was president, and with social media, they made the suicide of a Tunisian fruit seller go viral, and they created mass protests, and Al Jazeera promoted them, and social media promoted it, and all over the Middle East, you had unrests and rebellion and chaos, first in Tunisia, then in Egypt, and then it spread all over the region. And it was engineered by American intelligence. And what happened? The government of Libya, that had the most prosperous country, the most highest living standard in the African continent, was destabilized and overthrown. The Syrian Arab Republic was cast into civil war, and the Muslim Brotherhood was an essential part of making that happen. They spread instability and chaos, they promote violence, and they are agents of American imperialism. However, the socialist movement in America has decided to become a vehicle of the Muslim Brotherhood. It is absolutely insane. And, you know, the Muslim Brotherhood, because they are agents of the United States, they believe in the free market, they facilitate free trade, etc. A lot of Muslim Brotherhood aligned Muslims, wealthy Muslims from across the Muslim world, across the Middle East and Africa and Indonesia and other Muslim countries, study at the Ivy League schools. Right? And the Ivy League schools play an international role for the United States. Harvard, Yale, Columbia, these schools are very, very important. This is where young Muslims come to America, young people from across the world, not just the Muslim countries, but across the world, come to America, and they become assets of American intelligence, and they fall in love with the United States. And so having protests against Israel on the Ivy League campuses is essential for American intelligence. They need Muslims to come here and see that America allows people to disagree with Israel, see that America is a country where Muslims freely practice their faith. However, the Ivy League schools are also run by Zionists, right? Believe it or not, right? They have ethnic quotas now at American universities. They choose your race. They let you in on the basis of your race, right? We have so many black people. We have so many Arabs. We have so many Asians, etc. And the quotas are pretty bad. They tend to decrease. They make it less likely that you'll get into college if you are white and if you're Asian. Asian Americans and white Americans, their chances of being accepted at the Ivy League schools are less because of the quota system. Well, little known fact, among the whites, the people who are described as whites at Harvard and Columbia and Yale, almost all of them are Jews. Almost all of them. There are very few non-Jewish whites. They don't have a quota for Jews. They only have a quota for whites. And Jews are considered as white. And almost all the whites at Harvard, almost all the whites at Yale, almost all the whites at Columbia are Jews. And they tend to support Israel. So the Ivy League schools, almost all the white people there are Jews and Zionists, right? And so they've got a little bit of a problem, right? On the one hand, they need to recruit young Arabs and young Africans and young Indonesians and young Muslims from around the world to love America and show that America is friendly to Muslims. On the other hand, they need to make sure that those Zionist donors and Zionist alumni and Zionist people on the board and Zionist trustees don't get their feelings hurt. And so the Ivy League schools have become a center of a push and pull. The Muslim Brotherhood and the CIA want there to be big anti-Israel protests for international purposes. Meanwhile, the Zionists don't want there to be any anti-Israel protests on the Ivy League schools. They want the Ivy League schools to never offend and question Israel. So there's a push and pull going on. And of course, who does the protesting in America, right? If you have leftist protests going on, who does it? The communists, the socialists. And so we now have a weird situation where the Democratic Socialists of America, which is an organization that was created by CIA-aligned Trotskyites, Max Shachtman, Michael Harrington, Irving Howe, the Partisan Review crowd, they are now in an alliance with the Muslim Brotherhood, the main assets of American intelligence in the Muslim world that are anti-Israel because they're Muslims but hate Iran, were key in overthrowing the Syrian Arab Republic, were key in overthrowing the Libyan government. I mean, they're just agents of American imperialism. They are in bed with Democratic Socialists of America, and they are staging the Palestine movement. And you'll notice that many of the top voices of the so-called Palestine movement are Muslim Brotherhood aligned intelligence assets, right? Mahmoud Khalil, who Donald Trump tried to deport for leading protests at Columbia University. He has been an American intelligence and British intelligence asset for many years. He was key in bringing down the Syrian Arab Republic. When the government of Syria was overthrown, the new government has enabled the Israelis to use their airspace to attack Iran. So Mahmoud Khalil is an intelligence asset. Zoran Mamdani, possibly the next mayor of New York City, his wife is also a Muslim Brotherhood intelligence asset who's been involved in all kinds of regime change wars and regime change operations around the world. Linda Sarsour, who is the token Muslim of the Democrat Party of New York City. Linda Sarsour, she had protests in New York City when Donald Trump bombed Syria, not opposing the bombing, but saying he didn't do it enough because he's in bed with Putin, pushing the Russiagate hype. So the socialist movement, the Democratic Socialists of America, has entered this weird alliance with the Muslim Brotherhood. Because the Muslim Brotherhood needs there to be protests on the campuses at the Ivy League schools, and that's what the liberal CIA wants. DSA and the Muslim Brotherhood are almost synonymous. And that makes no goddamn sense because the Muslim Brotherhood believes in free market capitalism. And they believe that socialist planned economies, Arab nationalism is contrary to Islam. They want the Western system in the Middle East. Doesn't make any sense, but that's the situation we're in. Now, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, the PSL, they play an even more disgusting role because they claim to support the Islamic Republic of Iran. And they claim to support Russia and China and other anti-imperialist countries. Except right now, they see that they can make a lot of money by staging Palestine rallies. And so just this weekend, I was in Detroit, and me and Noah saw that PSL put on a convention in Detroit, the People's Conference for Palestine, that was nothing but a fucking DSA Muslim Brotherhood rally. The speakers were Linda Sarsour and Hassan Piker and all kinds of pro-imperialist Arab Democrats. And, it was basically, they had Rashida Tlaib there and others. And, we tried to hand out our book supporting Yemen and the Houthis, and they removed us from the event. They would not dare let us hand out a book for free about Yemen. Now, we still got it out at the door. We still got it out around in the parking garage and other places. We blasted that place with books. But they would not allow a book supporting the Yemeni people at their convention. But they rolled out the red carpet for Hassan Piker and Rashida Tlaib and the squad and Linda Sarsour. And this is PSL that claims to support Iran. But they don't because they're opportunists, right? The People's Forum, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, they are claiming to be anti-imperialists, but they are in an alliance with the DSA and with the Muslim Brotherhood. And at this point, they are supporting John Bolton. John Bolton also wants to attack Iran. John Bolton also wants to destabilize the Middle East. So we have all the socialist and communist groups that have joined up with the Muslim Brotherhood. And they are now protecting John Bolton. They are supporting John Bolton. And it's unbelievable. As Tulsi Gabbard is moving against John Bolton, the very same John Bolton who threatened to put Maduro in Guantanamo Bay, as we finally see the American government moving against John Bolton in the aftermath of the Trump-Russia summit, DSA and PSL are defending John Bolton, and they are joining the Stop Trump hysteria of the Muslim Brotherhood. It is absolutely unbelievable. PSL is supporting John Bolton. And that is one thing we need to keep in mind. The socialist groups have entered an alliance with the Muslim Brotherhood, with a terrorist organization that murdered Gaddafi, that destroyed Syria and created hundreds of thousands of refugees. The socialist and communist groups are functioning as assets of American intelligence. Yes, these are the ones who stripped Aaron Mate of his award for Palestine journalism because of his coverage of Syria. This is unbelievable what we are seeing. So we need to keep this in mind. All the socialist and communist groups are essentially agents of the most anti-communist, pro-imperialist, pro-free market, regime change entity in the Muslim world. You need to keep that in mind. And at this point, they're supporting John Bolton. Okay, so what do we do under these circumstances? This is a crazy moment. Things could go one way or another. What do we do? Well, what they want you to do is they want you to believe that there is nothing that you can do. They want you to just observe. They want you to sit in your house and listen to podcasts and comment on it and make fun of people. They don't want you to believe you can do anything. That's called living biologically, right? They want you to exist as an animal exists. This is really important. Friedrich Engels, one of the founders of Marxism, he wrote, "The animal merely uses its environment and brings about changes in it simply by its presence. Man, by his changes, makes it serve his ends, masters it. And this is the final and essential distinction between man and other animals. And once again, it's labor that brings out this distinction," right? Human beings are not plants. A plant is alive, but a plant doesn't do anything. It just kind of exists. A dog is alive, but it doesn't really do much. It barks, it eats its food, it exists, right? But what defines humanity is that we have the ability to change the world around us, to innovate, to make big decisions, to force the environment to serve us, to change and recraft the world. We have the ability to be creative. We have the ability to alter our environment. We have the ability to wrangle with big questions. Human beings have a power that no other species has. Human beings are unique in this ability. We can think critically and we can take action. And they don't want us to do that. They want us to exist only in the biological sense, to be alive biologically, just like a weed, just like a rat, just like a cat or a dog, just like, just like a piece of fungus. But they don't want us to actually take initiative. They don't want us to innovate and create. However, the entire history of human civilization has been understanding that we can live not simply in the biological sense, but embrace our humanity. Genesis in the Bible says, "Be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth, and have dominion." Right? That is what Genesis clearly says, is that human beings, we have the ability to replenish the earth. We have dominion, and we can create and change the world. We can craft the world in our own image. We can master our environment and change the earth. No other species is capable of doing what we're capable of doing, right? In just 5,000 or 6,000 years, we've gone from hunter-gatherers in the woods to space travel and iPhones, right? Ants make their ant farms the same way for thousands and thousands and thousands and millions of years. And beavers make their beaver dams the same way for millions and millions of years. And beehives look exactly the same. But human beings are innovators, right? We are innovators. We have the ability to create and to change the world, but they don't want us to understand that we have this ability. They want us to take on merely a biological existence. They want us to think that all we can do is sit back and observe, but we have the ability to intervene. But it takes psychological change, because everything in our society is designed to lull you into a sense of powerlessness. And you can go even further. The Abrahamic faiths, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, they have different traditions. One story is that of Moses, right? Moses, his people were enslaved in Egypt. Now, there's debate about whether it was really Egypt or whatever, but his people were enslaved. And the story goes that Moses encountered a burning bush, and the voice of God came to him through a burning bush. And this burning bush told Moses that he could free his people from slavery. Very, very interesting. Moses, his people were slaves, but a voice coming from a burning bush, the voice of God, told him that he could actually take action and free his people. And when Moses spoke to the burning bush, he said, "When I come to the children of Israel and say unto them, the God of your fathers hath sent me unto you, and they say to me, what is his name? What shall I say unto them? And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am hath sent you unto me." Now, what does that mean? I am hath sent you unto me. What in the world? God is saying, I am that I am, and you can say, I am hath sent you unto me. Well, what it's saying is that Moses is being made aware of his own agency. His people are in slavery, but he can take action to free them. He can assert his being. He cannot simply live biologically, but he can force the world around him to change. He can liberate his people. He can come into being. He can exist. He can be. He can am. He can I am. That is the point. God, the very existence of God is creativity and the ability to reinvent one's environment. He is saying, I am that I am. I am has sent me. God is giving him the permission to come into being. That is what the quote says. That is what it is. It is essentially Moses is being told that he has the ability to assert himself onto history and onto society. He doesn't have to take on merely a biological existence. He can mobilize and free his people from slavery by saying, I am, by asserting his humanity and not simply living biologically. And later, hundreds of years later, thousands of years later, Jesus Christ is in the Temple of Jerusalem. And he's arguing with the Pharisees, the religious authorities of his time that are corrupt and holding the people back and enabling the rich to ruthlessly exploit the poor and the corrupt religious authorities. And he's in the temple. And they say to Jesus Christ, you have no authority by which to argue with us. Oh, no, you're not qualified. You're just some guy from Nazareth. We're the priests. We're the Levites. We're the Pharisees. We get to talk about religion. You have no grounds to talk about religion. And what does Jesus Christ say back to them? The Jews said unto him, you are not 50 years old, and you have seen Abraham, right? He has no qualification. You haven't seen Abraham. You're not 50 years old and all this. And what does Jesus say to them? He says, truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am. I am. Jesus Christ is saying, I can assert my will. I am. I have chosen a non-biological existence. I can assert my humanity. I can change the world around me. I can innovate. I am empowered, and I am. Right? This is the important thing. This phrase, I am. Right? It represents human agency. God is the creator of all things. And we human beings have creative power that no other species has. What defines humanity is our ability to say, I am, to come into existence in more than simply the biological sense, to assert our creative abilities. This is innovationism. This is our ideology with the Center for Political Innovation. We understand the nature of God. We understand the nature of man. Man is a species that brings about changes in the environment and makes it serve his ends. We imitate the creator. God is the creator, and we are a creative species. And by doing so, right, what did Moses say was the name of God? What was he told? I am that I am. I am has sent you unto me. Before Abraham was, I am. That is the point, right? This is what we can understand. And our enemies, the dark forces that rule this world and run John Bolton, would have you believe there's nothing you can do. There's nothing that you can do. You just have to sit back. No, if we invade Venezuela, nothing you can do, right? Nothing you can do. Well, what is the role of the prophet, of the revolutionary? It is to say, no, I am. I can intervene. I can force the environment to serve me. I can innovate. I can change the world. I can push the world in a better direction. If I see injustice, I can speak against it. I am. I exist. That is the nature of humanity. And that's what we seek to do as the Center for Political Innovation. So right now we see this situation and we are intervening. We are intervening. And this is what makes us so completely different than all these other people who might say similar things to us, but they don't do anything about it. When Donald Trump was in Alaska meeting with Putin, we were in the streets of America with signs that said we support the peace talks, with signs that said thank you, Tulsi Gabbard, and we supported what Trump was doing, right? All the other people just sat on the internet. All the other people that that just, there's nothing we can do. We can listen to a podcast. We can argue about it. We said, I am. We're going to be in the streets. We see the potential for a war to end. And so I am. We are. We come into existence. We are going to innovate. What did we do this weekend? The Muslim Brotherhood and the DSA put on their convention to support Palestine. And so we went and we brought thousands of copies of our book, Who Are the Houthis and What Are They Fighting For? And we distributed it in bulk. And they kicked us out, and so we distributed it in the hotels, and we distributed it in the parking garage, and we handed it to people as they were going in the doors, and we got the message out there. We intervened. We said, I am, right? Furthermore, I'll show you all this. I am very proud to tell you all that the latest book by the Center for Political Innovation, our latest book that we just published, Trotsky and the Neoconservatives, exposing where John Bolton came from, where this satanic cabal that has lied and marched us to wars came from. This book that we published about who the neoconservatives are, who it is that Tulsi Gabbard is stripping of the security clearances, who it is that John Bolton works for, who it is that is trying to push us into war with Venezuela, trying to stop the peace talks. We are the #1 book on Amazon in the category of radical political thought. We are at #1. My interview with Kim Iverson about Trotsky and the Neoconservatives has been viewed on Rumble over 98,500 times. It has been viewed on this YouTube channel over 3,000 times. It has been viewed on other platforms. Over 100,000 people have watched this, and the book is selling like hotcakes. We are intervening. We have something to tell the American people about who the neocons are, why they come from Trotskyism, why they come from Leo Strauss and Max Shachtman and all these satanic evil people that speak in the name of socialism but really serve globalism. We have a message, and our message is getting out there. We are intervening in the process, right? This is important. And we are saying that you can do the same thing. You can help us carry out the operations, right? And we have rejected fandom as a model of organizing, right? So this stupid conference in Detroit happened this weekend, right? And, it was, the stage was run by Rashida Tlaib, who's a Muslim Brotherhood shill who votes to send weapons to Ukraine. And Linda Sarsour and Hassan Piker, who's one of these bread tube fuckheads who's, just a toxic piece of shit. And, we decided to intervene. And what did we do? We brought thousands of books and we intervened. There's another communist group, and we're not communists really, we're innovationists, but there's another group that uses the label of communism, that knows better, that at least claims to support Russia. And what did they do? They showed up. And they walked around and they took pictures of themselves. That's it. They didn't intervene. They didn't challenge the message. They didn't educate. They simply took pictures themselves and said, look at us. We're at the same place as Hassan Piker. Look at us. We're at the same place as people that are famous on the internet. Because they're not a real organization. They're just a fucking fandom. We intervened. We intervened so effectively, they had to drive us out of the conference. We were spreading so much knowledge and so much information, distributing thousands of books, challenging the pro-imperialist, anti-Houthi, anti-Iran message of this conference, that we had to be driven out of there. We intervened. Whereas the fandom builders, the grifters with their social media thing, what did they do? They walked around and took pictures of themselves. Oh, look at us. We're almost as famous. We're almost as famous as Hassan Piker. We're in the same place as someone who's famous on the internet. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Well, we weren't there to take pictures of ourselves. We were there to challenge the lies, just like we're doing with the Trotsky book, just like we did supporting the peace talks. When the Uhuru movement got raided by the FBI, we mobilized our forces to support the Uhuru movement. And we had events supporting them at the United Nations. And we raised their case in Russia. And we organized and supported them in St. Louis, Missouri. And we organized and supported them all across this country. We are a serious political movement that says we can intervene in the struggle. And these fandom builders, If you watch their material, they have all kinds of wankery online explaining that you can't intervene. Oh, no, you can't intervene. Oh, no, if you intervene, that's cringe. If you intervene, that's... They want to disempower their audience. They just want likes. They just want shares. They just want attention, social media revenue. They don't want to intervene in the process. And that's why when the Uhuru movement got raided, they did nothing for them, right? They're dumb. They think intervening is somehow Trotskyism. Yes, they make that very argument in their content. Why? Because intervening is risky. They're just building a fandom. We are intervening, and that is the nature of the Center for Political Innovation. And part of our intervening is solidifying against Khrushchevism. Khrushchevism is a big part of how they prevent people from finding their own power, from finding their own agency. I will tell you something that you need to understand, right? And this is where it's going to get a little complex and psychological, but I know that all of you that are watching, you're all very smart people. You can handle this, right? Human beings have natural urges, right? As you go through your life, you have different feelings. You have different feelings that are just natural. One feeling that you have is your sex drive, right? Men and women, we want to fuck, right? And that's libido. And our desire to fuck is linked to our desire for rage, right? We get angry and we like to watch a good boxing match and we like to watch an exciting story where there's conflict. Our desire for aggression and our desire to have sex are linked to each other, and that is called libido. On top of that, if you've ever been a teenager, which I certainly have, believe it or not, I'm 37 years old, but at one point I was a teenager. If you have ever been a teenager, when you're a teenager, you will inevitably hate and be full of anger at your parents at some point. And that's good, because that's what drives you to go out on your own and start your own life. And that is called your Oedipal feelings, your Oedipal desires, right? You, as a young person, you resent your parents' authority, and you resent the authority of your teacher, and you resent the authority of the government, and you want to rebel, right? And that is called Oedipal, and that's a natural, normal feeling. Just like it's natural for you to be, to be attracted somewhat to aggression and excited by aggression, just like it's natural for you to want to fuck, you also at some point want to rebel and overthrow your parents' authority. That's normal and healthy. However, there's another feeling that you have, right? And this is another feeling, which is when you are an infant, you will die if you are not taken care of. And they've actually done experiments. There was a guy named Piaget who did a demented experiment. He had women give birth to babies, and those babies, they were fed, but they were not hugged, they were not cared for, and they all died, right? And a baby needs the care of a parent, or else it will die. It needs parental care. And that desire to have a caring, protective figure care for you and guide you, that is also innate. Human beings need to have the love of a parent. They need the love of a parent. And that natural ingrained connection that a child has with its parents stays with you throughout your life. And that's called parental transference. Why is it that back in the day, nations had kings? Why did they have kings? Well, that was the king held the nation together utilizing parental transference. Why is it that even in the age beyond kings, we always have a head of state? We have somebody who runs the country, a president, a prime minister, a premier. Why? Because they are playing on the parental role. They are the father or the mother of the nation. And in fact, what people vote for tends to be what they want in a parent, right? During the election of Donald Trump, the liberals were saying, oh, all these Trump voters, they want Trump to be their mean daddy. And it was true. And when Barack Obama was running for president, people looked up to him like a father. And, female politicians, right? Hillary Clinton very much tried to play up like that she was a mother. And if you look at successful female politicians, right? There's a president of Chile who was a very successful leader, right? She played up motherly instincts, right? And that what we want in politicians tends to be what we long for in a caring parental figure, right? This is parental transference. And parental transference is just as natural as libido. It's just as natural as the Oedipal drive. It's just a part of the human condition. Just like we have libido, just like we have Oedipal feelings, we also have parental transference. This is just a natural part of our being. So what does all of this have to do with everything I'm talking about? It has a lot to do with it. If you are stripped of parental transference, if there is no one that you can look up to, you are weakened. It damages you, right? It damages you if you have no one to look up to and no one to care for. Meanwhile, what was it that was used to overthrow feudalism, right? When capitalism was emerging from feudalism, what was utilized to bring down the French king and overthrow king? It was Oedipal and libidinal desires. The color red was the color of the French Revolution. And the people went out and they wore their red caps and they cut off the head of the king, right? And what was utilized, and you go through all the revolutions that brought capitalism into the world, they tapped into people's Oedipal and libidinal desires, right? Their desire to rebel against their parents and break free from their tyrannical father or their tyrannical mother, and their desire to unleash their anger and rage and aggression and their sexual desires, right? And that's just a fact, right? And, it was smart, right? In feudal society, people are very, very controlled. And as capitalism was emerging, they said, kill your parents, let your sex drive out, let your anger out. Very smart. Well, that became what leftism was associated with. Leftism became the ideology or the perspective that emphasized libido and Oedipal drives. Meanwhile, conservatism became associated with parental transference, right? Why is it that, in France, the monarchists, they called themselves the party of order, and the conservatives in France were always trying to bring the monarchy back? Why is it that the traditional family is something that's emphasized by conservatives? Conservatives always say family values, right? And conservatives tend to appeal to parental transference, whereas the left appeals to Oedipal and libidinal desires, right? All very interesting, except you got to fast forward to the Russian Revolution of 1917. The Russian Revolution is a leftist revolution. The red flags are everywhere. They kill the king, Tsar Nicholas II. They're telling the workers to rise up and overthrow their bosses. There's red flags everywhere. But after a while, that doesn't fly anymore. After a while, that doesn't fly. And who emerges? Stalin. Stalin emerges to be the leader of the country. And Stalin takes on the persona of a czar, right? Stalin is the good king at the top. And during the Second World War, when Russia faced an onslaught that we cannot even imagine, when 27 million people were killed and the Russian people were starving and desperate and dying, what was it that empowered them to resist the foreign invaders? Was it Oedipal? Did they fight the Nazis on the basis of wanting to kill their parents? No. Did they fight the Nazis on the basis of loving blood and killing? No. They fought the Nazis on the basis of parental transference. Stalin was the father of the country, and he spoke over the radio, and he incarnated the spiritual power of the Soviet people. And furthermore, he brought back the Russian Orthodox Church, because a source of strength that is very, very powerful is the power of God, our Father in heaven. Right? And Stalin brought back the Russian Orthodox Church, and Stalin played the role of a fatherly figure. And it was that parental transference, that desire to defend our home, that desire to defend our country, that desire to protect the nest. This is our land. These are our people. That became the basis upon which the Soviet state was able to repel the Nazi invasion and engage in one of the most heroic military battles of all history, on the basis not of libido, not on the basis of Oedipal desires, but rather on the basis of parental transference, on the basis of Stalin as the father of the nation, on the basis of God, the creator of all things. That is how the Soviet people heroically repelled the Nazi invaders. That's how they did it. Right. And they made a film during the war about Ivan the Terrible, a great czar that held the land together. And they brought back the Russian Orthodox Church, and they began promoting Russian Orthodox Christianity. And it was on the basis of that bond that is created by family and community and nation. That's what held them together. They moved away from the libidinal and Oedipal aesthetics, and they adopted more of the parental transference aesthetics. Well, that's what the Trotskyites did not like. That's what the Trotskyites did not like. And what happened? after the Second World War. The Soviet Union rebuilt itself once again, and Eastern Europe joined with the Soviet Union. Eventually, China joined with the Soviet Union. But then what? Khrushchev, the leader who came after Stalin, got up before the entire world, before the global communist movement, and said, your father is evil. Your father, Stalin, the man who held this nation together, the voice that was on the radio as we endured this horrible war, the man who brought back the Russian Orthodox Church, the man who became the symbol of our national struggle against the invader, he was just in it for himself. He was greedy. He was selfish. And Khrushchev destroyed the connection, the spiritual bond that the Soviet people had with their leader, with Stalin. And they burned up those feelings of parental transference. And that led to a wave of demoralization that brought down the Soviet Union. But it was very, very effective. And that's what my book on Khrushchevism is about. This is what they want you to do. They want you to just completely give up hope. They want you to not believe in God. They want you to not have a connection with a higher power. They don't want you to have any leaders you can follow. They don't want you to develop a sense of loyalty to a community, to a family, to a nation. They want to render you powerless by taking away your connection with love and authority, and they want to amp up your libidinal and Oedipal impulses to destroy other countries. And that's what Trotskyism is. Trotsky's desire for permanent revolution was just Oedipal and just libidinal. And Trotsky was horrified by the restoration of parental transference and a government that emerged that brought people in to be loyal to the family, to the community, to the nation, right? And Trotsky, of course, hated the Russian Orthodox Church, and that this is a push and pull. And that the reason that John Bolton, who's an arch conservative and a defender of capitalism, has been trained by Trotskyites is because the Trotskyites discovered that their libidinal and Oedipal desires could, and their skill at manipulating people's rage and resentment could be very effective in destabilizing and overthrowing countries. And that's how they brought down the Eastern Bloc, the Soviet Union. They had color revolutions, Trotskyite, libidinal, and Oedipal revolutions. And now they have on Netflix, they're constantly inoculating you against any mass movement. They're trying to convince you to be an atheist, to not believe in God. They're trying to convince you that any revolutionary organization that might emerge is actually a cult, and it's a cookbook, it's awful. And this is the game that they are playing, right? In order to resist, in order to change the world, you can't do it alone. You got to work with other people. In order to say I am and assert yourself into the historical process, you need connections with other people. And they want to sever those connections. They want to break down any sense of community, any loyalty, any feelings of community and bond. They want to prevent you from saying I am. And by preventing you from saying I am, they can then rule over you and reduce you to a biological existence. This is all very, very important. This is all very, very important, and that's why the Center for Political Innovation exists. We say that you don't have to live simply biologically, that you can intervene in history, and we seek to empower you to do it, and we seek to build a community through which you can effectively intervene in politics. And right now, there's a huge fight. John Bolton could be prosecuted. There could be peace in Ukraine, and there is a push and pull within the deep state. We have to intervene. If we just sit back and say, oh, whatever is going to happen, happens, we will be failing. We must intervene in the historical process. We must say we will not exist simply in a biological sense. We must say, I am, and I will intervene. I will innovate, and I will try to change the world. I will not be reduced to being an internet fan. I will not be reduced to being just a mere observer. I will try to stop World War III. I will try to stop war against Venezuela. I will intervene in history. And that's what innovationism and our movement aims to empower you to do. We want you to awaken and discover your humanity by becoming an activist, by intervening, by speaking up, by coming into being and advancing the struggle against globalism and imperialism. And that's what we offer you. Take it or leave it. Join our movement or don't. But that's what the Center for Political Innovation can offer you. Other organizations want you to pay money. They want you to observe on the internet. We're not here building an internet fandom. We're trying to build a cadre of people, an organization of dedicated people who will intervene in the historical process. And that's what I have for you tonight. So I hope that people found that to be inspiring. So why don't we do our roll call at this point? Names and locations, names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Who is with us? The link to join is down below. It's cpiusa.org. Go to the website and hit join. Get involved, right? We have got a lot to do. cpiusa.org. Ryan in Kansas City, Zeno in Valav, Jenny in Cincinnati, Dunn in North Carolina, St. David's, Bermuda, Rice from Adelaide, Australia, Penny in Minnesota. We're going to show a video of hers pretty soon. Cleomus in Montreal, Brooklyn in the house, Philip High, Joe, Richard Fernando in Woodland, New Zealand, Jamie Gray. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Names and locations. John McCarthy in Chicago. I think I saw Jake in Portland earlier. His name went by. William in London. Matma in Phoenix. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Names and locations. We got Sanford in North Carolina. Anybody else? Names and locations. Names and locations. Rose in your heart. Connor Fines in Vancouver, British Columbia. Patrick in Maine. Yusuf in North Carolina. John in Orlando, Florida. Names and locations, folks. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Lawrence Johnson in Chicago. Huey Kingfish Long from the South. Good stuff, folks. Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. Ed in Louisville. Good to have you with us, Ed. Good to have you with us. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Luca in Singapore. Good to have you with us. Good to have you with us. Adam in Wisconsin. Wow, there's just a lot of people here tonight. A lot of people here tonight, and I'm glad to have you all here. I hope you all become members. We got Checkpoint Charlie and Kew Gardens, New York. Hope you all become dues-paying members of CPI and get involved. We will plug you into the struggle. There is so much that needs to be done. Our members, we're in Chicago intervening at concerts and getting Houthi books out. We're having study groups about Khrushchevism to solidify our organization. We were out there during, saying only peace can make America great again. We were in the streets supporting. We will intervene in the historical process, and we will empower you to find your own humanity and transcend merely a biological existence, to really be able to say, I am and innovate. That's what we're trying to do. We seek to empower you, and it is a great thing to be a member of the Center for Political Innovation, but it is more vitally important that we hold the organization together. The organization is vital. We cannot do it. The organization is in and of itself important, and TOEI in Sweden. So we need you all to ask questions, right? Your questions are key. They get me talking in the second half of the show. So if you've got something you want me to talk about, you can send a Rumble rant, as a couple people have already done on the Rumble. You can send a Cash App to me, Caleb Maupin 22 on Cash App. The best way to ask a question is to do what John McCarthy has already done and buy me a coffee. John McCarthy has already sent a couple questions via Buy Me a Coffee. We appreciate that. So send some questions. So I'm going to answer the questions, but we need more questions to come in. And I thought now would be a great time. I want to show you again, right? We're trying to empower you. One of our members, our captain of Minneapolis, is Penny Arcos. Penny Arcos is a regional captain of the Center for Political Innovation, very active, always doing outreach, always organizing rallies. And Penny saw a horrendous shooting that happened in her city on Thursday. And so what did she do? She made a video drawing from the innovationist movement and our analysis of it to explain the horrendous shooting in Minneapolis. So Penny did a great job with this video. As I wait for you all to send more questions for me to answer in the second half of the show, I'm going to put on Penny's great video about the shooting in Minneapolis, where she gave our analysis of what's happening. So here we go.
It's a beautiful day here in Minneapolis. I'm grateful to be able to take my mom out for a walk and see the community garden and the bike path and the little pond in the neighborhood. It's a great day to spend with family members. And speaking of family members, my heart goes out to the families who lost their children in the horrific school shooting in South Minneapolis yesterday. Beautiful South Minneapolis. Crime's not supposed to happen there, right? Parents are reeling with grief. My son went to a religious school, and I would be horrified if that happened to him. Friends and family were calling me all day to check on me from around the country. And then a Mexican relative called me and said, "What's transgenderism? And how did he get the guns? And why is it legal to have so many guns in this country?" Where do I begin? With the George Soros liberal agenda? Second Amendment? Our forefathers wanting to have a well-regulated militia to protect them against tyranny? Well, Police Chief O'Hara weighed in.
The sheer cruelty and cowardice of firing into a church full of children is absolutely incomprehensible.
Mayor Jacob Vito King Frey shared his outrage at the horror.
There are no words that can capture the horror and the evil of this unspeakable act. Every one of us needs to be wrapping our arms around these families, giving them every ounce that we can muster. These were Minneapolis families. These were American families. And the amount of pain that they are suffering right now is extraordinary. And don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. It was the first week of school. They were in a church. These are kids that should be learning with their friends. They should be playing on the playground. They should be able to go to school or church in peace without the fear or risk of violence, and their parents should have the same kind of assurance.
Tampon Tim, presidential hopeful, weighed in.
We often come to these and say, these unspeakable tragedies, or there's no words for this. There shouldn't be words for these types of incidents because they should not happen.
Obama gave his 2 cents worth. Genocide Joe weighed in. And even Orange Man had something to say. The flags will fly at half-mast to honor the victims. Therapy and counseling will be offered to the families. The media will be abuzz nonstop with interviews of the victims and neighbors of the shooter. And what was his family life like? Who can we blame? This is absolutely horrific. This should not be happening in America, right? The land of the free, liberty and justice for all. We're the shining light on a hill. But you can be sure that any culture war issues that there are to be exploited, the streamer bros will be milking them for all it's worth. The woke mob will blame religion and guns. The conservatives will blame trans people, and nothing will change. I just finished writing an article about the Uhuru doula program in North St. Louis. and how they're saving babies' lives by offering nutrition counseling and prenatal care to pregnant, low-income African mothers. This is the same African People's Socialist Party that Biden's DOJ sent the FBI to violently raid 2 years ago, accusing them of being Russian agents for opposing the Ukraine proxy war. Where was the outrage from the liberal media, the Black Lives Matter activists? My first reaction to this event was Atlanticist pathology. The United States and its NATO vassals have presided over the most barbaric, violent, murderous empire in the history of the world. Our elected officials are bleeding us dry to pump billions of dollars into Nazis in Ukraine to fight Russia to the last Ukrainian. Neo-Nazi Banderites in Ukraine have literally been shelling innocent children and families in the Donbas region in eastern Ukraine for 10 years. Where's the outrage? The Alley of Angels Memorial in the Donbas is a tribute to the hundreds of children that the neo-Nazi regime in Kiev has killed over the last 10 years. And we've literally been watching a live stream genocide in Gaza for the last 2 years. My second reaction was, I wonder if those parents have health insurance. Who's going to pay the emergency room bill? Hey, Bernie, what happened to Medicare for all?
A Medicare for all program is the way to go.
Hey, AOC, Ilhan Omar, what happened to force the vote?
All of Washington is not incentivized, on the whole, not incentivized to work in actually expediting guaranteed health care in the United States. Now, does that mean it's not going to happen? Absolutely not. Because mass movement organizing can force it to happen. Force it to happen. Do not trust any political party to automatically work in your interest.
I call on everybody in independent media to join this mission.
Force it to happen.
Force the Congress to show which side are they really on. No vote for Nancy Pelosi unless Medicare for all is put on the House floor for a vote.
Start bringing the ruckus on the Democratic Party.
Hypocrites, all of you. The Shooter's Manifesto included a call for the assassination of Donald Trump. And the shooter said that he had dark thoughts. He was obviously very troubled. But is it a surprise in our culture when the media algorithms pump us full of despair and hopelessness and hatred towards our neighbors? Our young people have no hope. As far as assassinating Donald Trump, there's plenty of things to be angry at him about.
Donald is coming to set you free, bringing the light for all to see.
War crimes, murders, You can say racism, whatever you want. But how many attempts on Trump's life have there been in the last 2 years? And why? How is a high school kid able to climb a roof at Trump's campaign rally in Pennsylvania with a high-powered rifle and murder a firefighter who happened to be standing behind Donald Trump? And what happened to that Ukrainian, Ryan Routh, who was caught with weapons of mass destruction at Trump's golf course? Didn't he try to kill Trump because, God forbid, Trump might put an end to the gravy train going to the narco Führer in Ukraine and start investing in America for once? God forbid we should stop the killing.
Shoot them in the gun! Shoot them in the gun! It's just the other news! Shoot them in the gun! Shoot them in the gun! Shoot them in the gun!
Так мужчин почти не осталось. Забирают всех. Без разбора.
Я с 15-го года служу, воюю, 2 войны прошел. Я, наоборот, считаю, что долг каждого нашего мужчины, украинца.
I agree. Trump has done some horrible things. But ending a war is an honorable thing. I'm going to read to you from this book called What is Innovationism by Caleb Maupin. Because I mentioned Atlanticist pathology, and I'm sure you've probably never heard the word. What is Atlanticism? Around the world, there is a rising school of analysis called Geopolitics that analyzes how geography and land masses affect the rise of civilizations. The first work of Geopolitics was a book called The Role of Sea Power in History by Alfred Mahan. He argued that the way to rule the world was to control the trade routes of the ocean. And he analyzed the rise of the British Empire, the Roman Empire, and other civilizations. In Russia, geopolitical analyst Alexander Dugin divides the world between 2 major types of civilizations, something called Atlanticist and Eurasian, or thalassocracy and tellurocracy. Atlanticism refers to a sea-based empire, or thalassocracies, empires and civilizations of the sea. The Roman Empire and the British Empire, along with the current international, political, and economic system centered around the NATO countries, gives the primary examples of Atlanticism. These are militaristic societies that concentrate wealth in mighty cities and control of global trade. They emphasize individualism and control through military domination. In opposition to Atlanticism and thalassocracy, there is Eurasianism, or tellurocracy. These are empires and civilizations of the land. They tend to focus on connecting different cultures through trade and development, building roads, etc. They focus on shared economic interests and partnerships. Russia's Eurasian Economic Union and China's Belt and Road are modern examples of tellurocracy. What is the Atlanticist pathology? In the first textbook of the Center for Political Innovation, Caleb Maupin spoke of the Atlanticist pathology. He noted that in 1888, a kind of murder that had never been seen before took place in Britain. The infamous Jack the Ripper, who hired prostitutes and then mutilated their bodies, shocked the world. What was equally shocking was that the London Times received thousands of letters from people falsely claiming to be Jack the Ripper, luridly describing details of the murder. Jack Ripper was the archetype of a kind of murderer that became common throughout the 20th century. The serial killer who derived sexual pleasure from violently murdering women. Serial killers were a direct result of cultural shifts that took place as Britain was emerging as an imperialist power. Parents were discouraged from showing affection to their children. Punishment was turned into a performative ritual. Sexual feelings became shamed and repressed in a much more intense way than ever before. All of this produced a form of violent, murderous insanity. It was not until the early 21st century and the rise of internet pornography that serial killers began to decline. They were replaced with mass shooters, another spawn of Western civilization, who became the primary form of murderous insanity.
We came, we saw, he died.
The Atlanticist pathology refers to a deviant mindset that arises from Western civilization. First, serial killers and later mass shooters both give expression to Western individualistic and militaristic ideology. They celebrate violence and asserting their will over others through violence. They are usually insecure in their masculinity and feel a need to prove their strength. And they tend to be fixated on their libido, the internal drive that connects violence and sex. Serial killers and mass shooters are much like Western imperialists, seeking to prove their strength and assert dominance with explosive displays of destructive violence. The way the U.S. military destroyed Iraq in 2003 with shock and awe and murdered thousands of Iraqis is a similar in mindset and intent to the murders of Jack the Ripper or to the many shootings at American high school. It flows from an individualistic, destructive mindset cultivated by the Atlanticist global order. Parental transference, the desire to embrace the love of a caring father or mother figure whom you can look up to, is the primary psychological balance to Oedipal and libidinal drive. Western society is busy inoculating people against parental transference, denying the existence of God or any moral authority, warning people about the dangers of cult of personality, etc., while emphasizing Oedipal and libidinal drive in a culture that celebrates violence, destruction, rebellion, vengeance, distrust, and individual self-gain. There is a better way. Countries in the global south and in East Asia have broken out of the imperialist globalist system. Countries like Burkina Faso in West Africa, Captain Ibrahim Traore, in partnership with the Alliance of the Sahel States, has nationalized gold mines, is presiding over an agricultural boom, has built tomato processing plants. They're building food security. They're turning soldiers into farmers, farmers into soldiers. They're building schools and hospitals. And they're teaching their children the value of patriotism.
After 10 days spent at the Marian Guabi High School in Ouagadougou, between making and laying paving stones, drawing and visual arts, civic and military education, tree planting, and learning how to live together in society, the results are astounding. The president of FASO delivered a message to the campers of the FASO Mebo Holiday Camp, which we invite you to listen to.
Fellow campers, good morning. I am very moved this morning to see you and to realize that in just 10 days, you have learned many civic, patriotic, and military values. Congratulations to you all. This is very important for us, and I can tell you that you are the first graduating class of a small part of a much larger program that will soon involve our entire educational system. It is very important for us to prepare you. You are the future of our nation. Today, Burkina is at war, but the war will soon be over, and it is you who will build our country. It is all the more true that our duty is to see you grow up in the best possible conditions, to ensure that you have enough to eat, that you can study properly in a healthy and safe environment. But it is also imperative for us to prepare you so that you do not become weak men tomorrow. Because if you live in abundance and do not understand the realities of life, you may become weak men, and weak men inevitably create times of war again. We do not wish that for you, and that is why we must prepare you to face life. You were able to live together for these 10 days, you learned to be supportive of one another, and that is all we ask of a Burkinabe. Integrity, solidarity is also part of it. If you are not supportive of your peers, you are not truly acting with integrity either. So always learn to be supportive, to share, and to love your neighbor. It is through love and unity that we will be able to build our Burkina Faso. I would also like you to understand that what you learned there is that you can't always do whatever you want. Everything is done with discipline, isn't it? So living in society means always taking your neighbor into account, considering the person next to you, and not just doing or saying whatever you want under the pretext of being free. That is not living in a society. That completely undermines our social cohesion. Keep these values in mind and share them with your classmates when school resumes.
America must have a spiritual awakening and repent of the horrific crimes of genocide against the indigenous people and the Africans who were enslaved and brought here against their will. We need to unite as brothers and sisters, as working families, to turn this country around. We must reunite with the anti-fascist alliance of Russia and China that we had during the Great Patriotic War. President Trump, you need to be in China in September with President Xi and President Putin, celebrating the victory of China in their resistance against Japanese aggression. We must end this system of imperialism, globalism, and forge a new path for this country, built on love and respect, and trade, not sanction and war. Dare to struggle, dare to win.
That was a tremendous video from Penny. And I hope that more people will make such videos explaining the innovationist perspective about Atlanticism, about everything that we're about, and providing our analysis, right? We need to expand our understanding of the world. We are innovating. We are blazing new ground. No one talks the way we talk, and no one empowers people to intervene the way we do. And the Center for Political Innovation is marching ahead. So thank you for that amazing video, Penny. Yeah, it was great. She did a great job. And people have sent their questions. So I'm going to answer some of those questions that have come in. And I'm going to give people more of a chance to send more questions. If you want to, send, a question, you can send it via Rumble Rants. You can send it Caleb Bompin 22 on Cash App. But the best way to send it is buy me a coffee. On the Rumble, Leo Messi says, did you see Patrick Bet David Jubilee video where he calls the U.S. socialist? I did not see that. Who is Patrick Bet David? Right? Patrick Bet David as an American businessman. Oh, okay. He's that guy. I've seen that guy around, right? And he calls America socialist. Well, it's a very common thing among like ultra libertarian types to say the USA is socialist because we have a post office, because we have unemployment insurance, to say because we have income tax. Libertarian types and conservatives believe that capitalism is the unknown ideal. Ayn Rand actually wrote a book, Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal. Real capitalism has never existed. They argue, and they want to get rid of all the welfare state. They want to get rid of all the restrictions on capitalism. And what's interesting is, first of all, if you point out to any of the problems that exist, and I've argued with these people for decades, you point out to any of the problems that exist, they say, well, that's not capitalism's fault because we don't have real capitalism. However, if you say that that socialism or a planned economy is better, they'll respond and they'll say, oh, but America is so much wealthier. And then America is capitalist, right? They move the goalpost constantly. Sometimes socialism is North Korea. But then if you point out all the success China's had, well, they say China's capitalist. If you point out all the problems America has, the USA is socialist. If you point out all the success America's had, well, the USA is capitalist. They move the goalpost constantly. Their definition of what is capitalism and what is socialism is very fluid. Sometimes China's communist, sometimes China's capitalist, sometimes North Korea is communist, sometimes North Korea is capitalist, sometimes America is socialist, sometimes America is capitalist. It just depends on what they want. When they're having to deal with the problems of U.S. society, well, the USA is socialist. It's not really capitalism. So none of America's problems can be blamed on it. And it's really loose. The problem is, though, that, taxation happens under every system. There has never been a government in the world that has not taxed. In the time of ancient Egypt, they taxed people. In the time of Mesopotamia, they taxed people. In feudalism, they taxed people. In slavery, they taxed people. In capitalism, they taxed people. But yet, neoliberalism, which is the ultra free market ideology, has decided that socialism means taxes. And nobody likes paying taxes. I don't. No one likes to pay taxes. And so they've said, well, taxes are redistribution of wealth, and socialism is redistribution of wealth. So taxes are socialism. Well, if I thought socialism was taxes, I would hate socialism too, right? And the problem is DSA, the Democrat Socialists of America, that are now, in an alliance with the Muslim Brotherhood, the regime change socialists, they agree with this, right? Socialism is when the government gives people free stuff and pays for it with taxes. Well, that's not what socialism is. And you'll notice all these DSA people are very, very wealthy. Mamdani is a very, very wealthy person. Ilhan Omar has $30 million, but yet they tell us wealth is bad. They almost play into what neoliberalism says, right? Wealth is not bad. Socialism is not redistribution of income. Socialism is when the banks and the factories and the industries and the centers of economic power are rationally organized, when the chaos of the market is transcended, and you have a government of action that fights for working families and controls the means of production in order to ensure economic growth. And socialist governments nowadays tend to have a lot of private businesses. China, Vietnam, Cuba, they tend to have a lot of private businesses. Nicaragua has a lot of private businesses, but they have a planned economy. Profits are not in command, right? And sometimes capitalist countries tax a lot, and sometimes they don't. Socialist countries sometimes tax a lot, sometimes they don't. But taxation has nothing to do with whether or not a country is socialist or capitalist. But conservatives equate socialism with taxation, and DSA and the Muslim Brotherhood, CIA socialists agree with them. And it's very infuriating. If all that Mao had done was tax income that already existed in China, China would still be deeply poor. But Mao built a state-run economy and raised millions up from poverty. If all Stalin had done was tax people and redistribute wealth that was already there, Russia would never have become an industrial superpower that invented space travel and defeated the Nazis. The essence of socialism is not taxation, redistribution of income. Socialism is a change in property relations. It's when the centers of economic power are forced to work in accordance with an overall state central plan. So that's important. And that's something conservatives don't understand, but it's something the left doesn't understand and goes out of its way not to teach people because it would require them disagreeing with the Democrats. What it really gets down to, and I mean, there's just no other way to put this, is that, the DSA crowd and even people like PSL that kind of maybe know better, they are so determined to support the Democrats and never alienate the Democrats, and God forbid, never align with any Trump supporters or conservatives, that they completely abandon their principles. And so, the right wing says socialism is redistribution of income, and they say, yeah, and we like that. Well, no, that's not what it is, right? Democrat Party policies of expanding the welfare state by taxing people, that is not socialism. It might be a good thing sometimes, but it's not socialism. But PSL is so determined to be supporting the Democrats and opposing the Republicans, they can't challenge that. And that's a problem. That is a problem. All right. Now, Penny sent me a video of the Burkina Faso Orchestra in Russia. So maybe we'll show that later. We just showed a long video from Penny. But that's a great thing. The Burkina Faso Youth Orchestra performed in Russia. Burkina Faso is an anti-imperialist country, and they're building a planned economy. And it's a really great thing what they are doing. It's really, really tremendous. So, we have a book that Penny wrote about Burkina Faso, which Africa's Flame, The Rise of Ibrahim Traore. It's a very great book that we're glad to have published as the Center for Political Innovation. So there you go. There you go. All right. Now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, oh, no, we have the vid in question. Maybe I will react to it later. It's from the Surrounded YouTube channel, right? It's getting a lot of attention. Maybe we'll react to it later. I almost don't even want to watch the cringe anti-capitalists in this video, but that's interesting. So this is Bet David, the Iranian guy who's a conservative, reacting to a bunch of woke people that think they're socialists and don't understand what socialism is. I may react to this video at some point. I don't know if I'll be able to stand it. It'll probably make me so angry. I've spent my life studying what socialism is, visiting socialist countries, understanding that socialism is when the banks, factories, and industries no longer operate according to the chaos of the market, but are rationally organized. And I've been hearing my whole life from conservatives, socialism is taxes. Socialism has taken my hard-earned money and given it to some lazy bum. And then DSA comes along and tells people, well, that's actually what socialism is, and that's actually good. It's infuriating. And of course, DSA, they're the people that, that align themselves with the Muslim Brotherhood, the most anti-communist, anti-socialist, anti-Arab nationalist, anti-Gaddafi, anti-Ba'athist forces in the Middle East. It's infuriating to watch, but it is what it is. And, I may react to that on a future stream. I've got a little bit of a headache, and I don't know if I want to do that tonight. John McCarthy sent 3 Buy Me a Coffees. So I'm going to react to all of them. The first one, he says, I saw the great David Rovics last night. He played a song about something I'd never heard before. Apparently, in 1854 in Wisconsin, over 1,000 white abolitionists stormed a prison to prevent the Fugitive Slave Act from being enforced. That's neat. I never heard of that either. But it sounds like something that they would do. The abolitionists were a revolutionary movement in American history that was opposed to slavery, was inspired by the Great Awakening, a religious movement, the Second Great Awakening, which my ancestors were involved in, Charles G. Finney and others. And it sounds like something they would do. And the fugitive slave law, that was a big part of why the Civil War happened, is that the South was able to get a law passed that said that states that didn't have slavery had to cooperate. And if a slave got free, they had to arrest him and send him back. And many of the states said, no, we don't have to do that. And when Lincoln got into office, it was understood that things like the fugitive slave law would not go on. The federal government would not cooperate with slavery. And that led to the southern states seceding from the country. And that's an important thing to remember, that it wasn't about states' rights. That's what we're constantly told is, well, it's about states' rights, states' rights. No, it wasn't. The southern states wanted the federal government to cooperate with slavery. And that it wasn't enough for them to just have slavery on their own. It was that they wanted the federal government to accommodate and cooperate with slavery. And they weren't going to do it. And so they took up arms because they demanded that the federal government facilitate slavery. That's what the Civil War was about. It was not about states' rights. It was definitely not about states' rights. All right. The next coffee that John bought says Helga Zepp LaRouche is launching a campaign to use UN Resolution 337 as a way to get around the U.S. veto on Gaza. Have you heard about this? Yes. And we, as an organization, we signed a petition by the Islamic Council on Human Rights making the same appeal. Many different people that, are sympathizers with the Islamic Republic have signed, a letter to the United Nations that was put forward by the Islamic Human Rights Commission. We CPI were featured among other signatories, including George Galloway and other people, making the same appeal for the United Nations to intervene in Gaza to protect the Palestinians. We signed it, and our name is listed along with a number of great people across the African continent, across Europe, great intellectuals, great writers, black activists in America, etc. We signed this very important letter from the Islamic Commission on Human Rights to the United Nations. And Helga's, petition, if she wants us to sign that, we'll sign that as well. Right? The Palestinians are being murdered around the clock, and something must be done to support them. And so, yes, we are in full agreement with Miss LaRouche on that point. And the next question is, the Democrats are attacking Tulsi for supposedly outing a covert CIA agent, Lady Julia Garganas. Earlier this year, was writing articles and giving speeches about bragging a CIA agent. Wow. Ratcliffe didn't label her covert until after Tulsi started her investigation. And I saw an article about that, about Zero Hedge. They're playing games here, right? They want to, not allow Tulsi Gabbard to work against the Russiagators. And this open, very public CIA-linked individual was not a covert agent until after Tulsi revealed her. I mean, it's utter lying and deception from the mainstream media. MSNBC was running this story today. Oh, Tulsi Gabbard outed a CIA agent. She was already out. She was already public. She wasn't listed as covert until after Tulsi gave her that designation. But now that she's listed as covert, Tulsi can't respond to their allegation. And that's the thing. If Tulsi were to say, well, actually, she's, then that would be a crime. And so Tulsi can't legally respond to the allegation. That's how ruthless these motherfuckers are. They lie and get us into a war after war after war. And they basically committed a maneuver to prevent Tulsi Gabbard from responding, an allegation she can't respond to. Somebody who was already known as a CIA agent. They accused her of outing them when they were already known to be a CIA agent. She stripped them of the security clearance. Then they made them a covert agent. It's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous that they would engage in these games. Absolutely ridiculous. Now, if people have further questions, you can send them via Buy Me a Coffee. You can send them via, it's not like Valerie Plame. Valerie Plame was actually a CIA agent, and she was outed by Dick Cheney. This is a case where the person was already public, and it's a game that the intelligence agencies are playing. It's very different than the Valerie Plame case. It is completely different, right? Completely different. But questions can be sent via Rumble Rants. You can cash at me at CalebMoppin22, or you can buy me a coffee. There's one more thing I wanted to do tonight. And that is, it's interesting. The leader of the Party for Socialism and Liberation is Brian Becker. And Brian Becker is a con artist. And, seeing what they did at their Palestine conference, how they basically rolled out, the red carpet for the Muslim Brotherhood and forbid our book, about the Houthis from being distributed at their conference. It made me want to revisit some of his old stuff. And I came across an interview that Brian Becker gave where he smeared Jose Vega. And this was a couple years back, but Jose Vega is a great anti-imperialist activist. He's part of the Schiller Institute and the LaRouche movement. And we're not LaRouchists. We have different perspective at the Center for Political Innovation. But we love Jose. Jose has spoken at our events in the past. We admire Jose. And in the aftermath of Jose doing something really badass and confronting AOC, Brian Becker decided he had to smear Jose. So I wanted to respond to, that whole thing. First of all, this is what Jose did that was really awesome. This is Jose confronted AOC for supporting Nazis in Ukraine.
Woman, none of this matters unless there's a nuclear war, which you voted to send arms and weapons to Ukraine. Tulsi Gabbard, she's left the Democratic Party because they're a bunch of war hawks. Okay? You originally voted, you ran as an outsider, yet you've been voting to start this war in Ukraine. You're voting to start a thermonuclear war with Russia and China. Why are you playing with the lives of American citizens? You're playing with our lives.
There will be no neighbors if there's a nuclear bomb. You voted to mobilize and send money to Ukrainian Nazis. You're a coward. You're a progressive socialist. Where are you against the war mobilization? He's telling the right truth. You have done nothing. Tulsi Gabbard has shown guts where you've shown cowardice. I believed in you, and you became the very thing you sought to fight against. That's what you've become. You are the establishment, and you are the reason why everybody will end up in a nuclear war unless you choose to stand up right now and denounce the Democratic Party. Will you do that? Yes or no? Okay, simple. Are you going to stop nuclear war? Yes or no? There is no line, because this is bullshit. None of this matters if we're all dead. None of it. You know that. Then let's take it up right now, because this is the only thing that matters. This is the only thing that matters right now. We could be in a nuclear war at any minute, and you continue to fund it. That's what's going on. Why not right now? You're the liar here. Nobody has held you accountable. That's what's happening. And it is time for you to stand up and realize that what you've been saying has been lies. Let your conscience come through for once.
Yeah, that was great. That was great. And I think anyone who is an anti-war activist who doesn't want the USA sending huge amounts of money to Ukraine to prolong this war would be happy that Jose did that. That was absolutely awesome. It was great. Jose was awesome, and rightfully so. Those of us who oppose World War III were very happy with Jose, and Jose was praised widely for this. Well, you know, you would think that Brian Becker, who is an anti-war activist his whole life, who says he doesn't want the USA to be involved in Ukraine. He's barely done anything to oppose it, and he spends more time organizing Stop Trump rallies and pandering to Stop Trump hysteria. But you'd think Brian Becker would say, good one. He would see this young man of color standing up to AOC, confronting her about nuclear war, and he'd say, good job. That's not what Brian Becker did. No. Brian Becker decided he had to get on a podcast and make sure that everybody knew that for some reason, this wasn't okay. This young man confronting AOC wasn't okay. And this is the clip. And we're going to go through this, right? Because he lies and distorts and is deceptive. Brian Becker is a lying sack of shit. He doesn't want to stop World War III. He even is quoted in the New York Times saying he doesn't actually care about if he stops the wars. He just cares about radicalizing people. But this is, you know, you guys need to see this. This is Brian Becker responding to a heroic act by an anti-war activist. And he gets on a podcast, and this is how he responded to heroic activism by Jose.
I want to bring up the issue of Lyndon LaRouche, because Lyndon LaRouche
was Lyndon LaRouche there in the clip? I didn't see Lyndon LaRouche in that clip. Did you? Anyway, Jose, yes, he's part of the Schiller Institute.
The figure who's, you know, he's dead now, but he was around a long time, had this like cult that, you know, he started out left wing, became a right winger to the point where he was basically sending people out to beat communists, literally beat up communists. But a very marginal figure with like a marginal cult following, but they've suddenly like become, I don't know, they're in the public like space again because some of their people have been like protesting members of the squad for giving money to Ukraine. One of the ones that went viral was this video of AOC being protested by by a LaRoucheite. And this is what they do, right? They like kind of, it's a marginal group. They cause these like spectacles to get everybody talking about them. And that's how they end up getting, platforms to go, spread their message. And the reason I raise this is because it has been getting a lot of attention, but also it is a part of this phenomenon you're talking about where.
Now, isn't that a good thing, right? If you oppose sending weapons to Ukraine, aren't you glad that somebody did this? I guess not, right? Because the person is in an organization that you don't like, even if they make a splash about a cause that you support, that's bad. And also, why haven't PSL members ever done this? I've never seen PSL confront AOC, ever. So, yeah, this is who's interviewing. This is Rania Kolick interviewing Brian Becker.
People are being pulled into this weird right-wing space that claims to be anti-war, but I don't actually think it is, especially when you have people like.
Looks pretty anti-war to me. When Jose was confronting Brian Becker. Let's get to Brian. This is just Rania, talking. She's just a talking head. She doesn't really have a real thought in her head ever. So let's get to Brian.
In this particular case, throwing out somebody like AOC should be more like Tulsi Gabbard, somebody who isn't
somebody who just exposed that Russiagate was a fraud, somebody who has arranged a situation where John Bolton might go to jail. I think Tulsi Gabbard's done far more to stop the war than you have, talking head Rania, but continue.
And if there was anything left wing, has pretty much like distanced herself from that at this point. But I wanted to get your reaction to this because you've been organizing quite some time. I'm sure you've periodically over the years come into contact with these people, the LaRoucheites, if you will. I don't know how significant or important they are, but I guess I wanted to ask you about it more as like a trend. And what do you think is happening with this now? And what is this weird, bizarre, like, I don't even know what to call it. It's not a coalition, but it's this grouping of people who are like claiming to be
who are disrupting town halls and opposing World War III, while PSL has stopped Trump rallies.
Anti-war, but in claiming to be left, but actually aren't.
Right.
Claiming to be left, but actually aren't. Who cares if you're left? Why does that matter? Why does it matter if you're left or right? Like, how about what you stand for? How about your principles? There's all kinds of people that are left that I don't agree with. There's all kinds of people that are right that I don't agree with. I care about right and wrong, not left or right, whether you're on the red team or the blue team. But I guess that's what we need to be concerned about, is that Jose, I don't think Jose claims to be left, but regardless, that's what Rania thinks is important. Jose claimed to be left and he's not, which I don't think he did. But anyway, let's master Brian, the great brain, the guru of the Party for Socialism and Liberation, which is totally not a cult, unlike every other group they don't like. Here we go.
Well, I'm just a little thing about the LaRouche grouping. It was a tendency within SDS in the late 1960s. It was a weird sort of
weird, it doesn't sound like Kamala Harris. They're weird, that right there, right? First of all, if you're an American and you believe in socialism or communism, you're already weird. You do realize that. To 90% of Americans, being a socialist or a communist and involved in a socialist communist group is weird. So if your concern is being weird, Brian Becker is already weird. So is everyone in his organization. Like, oh, we can't be weird. I mean, I'm sorry, right? We're going to oppose the system that the United States runs. We're going to embrace communism, an ideology that the American government has taught us is pure evil. But we're not going to be weird. No one's going to think we're weird in the process. Right there.
Sort of split from Trotskyism. And then, and when they were in part of the left, I lived in Rochester, New York. My brother Richard and I were organizers in 1970, a long time ago. And we had meetings with them, and they were just a weird sort of marginal, bizarre left group, but we knew them. In 1971 or 72, they became they took this right-wing racist turn, and they started attacking meetings of the Communist Party, physical assaults. I mean, like where lots of people were injured, armed assaults on Communist Party, Socialist Workers Party, and most notably against the National Welfare Rights Organization, which was a black organization, predominantly 90% black organization. And the LaRoucheites would carry out physical assaults against the welfare rights meetings, which were mainly welfare recipients who were coming together, organizing for rights, for political and social and economic rights for welfare recipients in the U.S. And then through the whole 70s, they became, through their different front groups, they create lots of front groups, they became basically a pro-FBI voice.
Okay, so let's back up here, all right, before we get to the next part. Yeah, I guess Jose, this young black man, is racist. But first of all, Brian Becker is lying through his teeth right there, because he knows that communist groups being violent to other communist groups was routine, right? And if you have any questions about that, go and read my history of the new communist movement. There was a communist group called the Progressive Labor Party that beat up the Socialist Workers Party. I actually met an old man who was missing an eye because he was in the Socialist Workers Party, and somebody in the Progressive Labor Party knocked his eye out. There was a group called the Spartacist League, a Trotskyist group that would rough it up with other communist groups. There were communists who supported the African National Congress, ANC, of Nelson Mandela, and they got violently attacked by communists who supported the Pan-African Congress, the China-backed group. Communist groups being violent to other communist groups happened all the fucking time in the 1970s. So he's making it sound like it's some scandalous thing, right? And I don't know what that has to do with Jose and why that makes Jose's intervention against AOC somehow not correct, right? I mean, this is, I've never heard of it. So he's talking about events in 1970 where a communist group, which the LaRouche group was back then, fought another communist group, which happened all the time. Somehow that makes it a bad thing that Jose confronted AOC. I mean, this is utterly despicable. Communist groups fought each other all the time. And this organization, this National Welfare Rights Organization, if you talk to the LaRouches, if you talk to them, their understanding is that they would go to these meetings and try to ask questions and get violently attacked. And the Communist Party attacked them on the street and fought them. And the FBI had infiltrated the Communist Party and was trying to manipulate those groups. Look, the Black Panthers got into a shootout with rival black organizations. This happened in the 70s. This is how the deep state operates. And for some reason, LaRouche is special because they got violent with other groups that were violent to them when all kinds of other communist groups did this. And Brian Becker knows this. And his organization that he was in at that time, the Workers' World Party, they got violent with other groups routinely. They fought with different communist groups. They got into street fights all the time. I've heard the stories from the old cadre. So right there, he's being dishonest. There's something special about the National Caucus of Labor Committees that they got into fistfights, as if that didn't happen all the time. The Communist Party violently attacked the Workers' World Party. The Workers' World Party fought with the Communist Party and with the Socialist Workers' Party. So right there, he's distorting things. And what in the world does that have to do with Jose, right? Because of fistfights that happened at welfare rights meetings in the 70s, a young black man who stood up against the march toward World War III is a racist, according to Brian Becker. This is absolutely despicable. But we continue.
They became
here we go.
Different front groups. They create lots of front groups. They became basically a pro-FBI voice. They became they started attacking the anti-nuclear movement in the late 1970s after 3 Mile Island. They were we literally had to defend our meetings from physical assaults from the LaRouche people. So when people say it doesn't matter if they're saying something good and they're against the war and it doesn't matter who they are, well, just think about that for a second. If Mussolini, who had been a socialist at one time before he became the leader of fascism in Italy, if people allied with Mussolini happen to have the same position that you do on some issue, do you think like, oh, that's fine?
Now, this is, first of all, there's a lot there. First of all, he says pro-FBI. They were not a pro-FBI organization. The FBI put Lyndon LaRouche in jail, right? Maybe go read the Wikipedia page. and read about how they were charged and how Lyndon LaRouche was railroaded to federal prison by the FBI. Meanwhile, Donald Trump was targeted by the FBI. And at the same time, the FBI was claiming that Donald Trump was threatening their sovereignty, PSL was organizing rallies against Trump. So they were on the same side as the FBI. The FBI threw Lyndon LaRouche in jail. Meanwhile, the FBI and PSL were on the same side as part of the Stop Trump movement. So, this is pretty ridiculous. On top of that, the anti-nuclear movement, right? Do you know why the Soviet Union fell? One of the main ways the Soviet Union fell was because people like Bernie Sanders, people like the anti-nuclear movement were going over to the Soviet Union and coordinating with the Gorbachev wing of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union that brought down the Soviet Union. Nuclear power is not bad, right? Nuclear power is good. Who are the main funders of the anti-nuclear movement? Big oil. Big oil, because nuclear power threatens to put them out of business. The big oil companies that want degrowth and believe in Malthusianism and believe there are too many people in the world and there's overpopulation, funded a movement to try and stop nuclear energy. And the movement that they created set up shop in the Soviet Union, infiltrated the Soviet Communist Party, and set the stage for Gorbachev and for fucking perestroika. So the fact that the LaRouche people might not get along with a movement that had a pretty bad effect and a pretty bad impact, that's not surprising to me at all. And he says, well, we had to defend our meetings from the LaRouche people. Yeah, probably. And you had to defend your meetings, at the All People's Congress, which Brian Becker was at in 1981. They had to defend their meetings from black nationalists who showed up with firearms, who supported the Pan-African Congress and opposed the African National Congress. And at the same time, they had to defend their meetings from the Spartacist League, a Trotskyist group that tried to disrupt Workers' World meetings. You're a liar, Brian. You're a fucking liar, right? Yeah, your group didn't get along with the LaRouche group. It also didn't get along with certain black nationalists. It also didn't get along with the Unification Church. It also didn't get along with the Spartacist League. It also didn't get along with Maoist groups. There's nothing special about this group Jose is in, that it was violent. Your organization, Workers' World Party, that I was a member of for many years, got into fistfights with all kinds of different political groups because you all want to be king of the protest cage. So don't give us that bullshit, Brian. Right? People who don't know any better might think, oh, the only group that's ever gotten into a fistfight with communist groups is the LaRouche people. That's a fucking lie, Brian. And you know it. You're a lying sack of shit.
The KKK takes a position, that's against.
Let's talk about this too. This is my favorite.
Well, just think about that for a second. If Mussolini, who had been a socialist at one time before he became the leader of fascism in Italy, if people allied with Mussolini happen to have the same position that you do on some issue, do you think like, oh, that's fine? Or if the KKK takes a position, that's against, sending money to Ukraine, do we say, oh, yeah, let's be with the KKK?
So, now just because, let's point this out, he's now calling a young African-American man who stood up to AOC, he's equating him with the Ku Klux Klan, right? That's what Brian's doing. The only reason I'm bringing that up is because the PSL people and Ronnie Akalik love to play that card. All white men are bad. So let's just keep this in mind. An old white dude is calling a young black man a KKK member, right? That's kind of against the rules in PSL, I think. But I guess he's above the rules. They only apply to people that he's trying to smear and drive out of his organization, right? They play that identity politics card. Sam Marcy used to do the same thing. It's pretty despicable, right? If any other member of his group ever called a young black man a Ku Klux Klansman, they'd be expelled and publicly shamed in front of the group. But he's the big boss. He's the big, straw boss who lives in a fancy mansion. He's allowed to do that, right? He can call a young man of color KKK and get away with it. But also, what is he saying there, right? What has LaRouche ever done that puts them in the same category as the Ku Klux Klan, right? I mean, has LaRouche ever killed anybody? As LaRouche, are they advocating racial supremacy? Many of the most prominent leaders of that group are black. So because you say a group is like another group, no one's allowed to work with them, and we're not allowed to be happy about their anti-war work. I'm wondering how this works. So basically, if Brian thinks a group is like Mussolini or like the KKK, their anti-war activism is bad. I mean, this is I'm clear as to how this works. So basically, according to Brian, if he thinks that you are like another group, that makes your activism bad. So we better all check with Brian before we do any anti-war work, because if he thinks that the group we're in is like a group that's completely unrelated, I mean, this is completely nonsensical. Okay, good for you, Brian. You don't like the group he was in, but you're running down an important young activist because of the fact that he did the activism that your group didn't do.
It does matter. It matters a lot what the nature of the group is.
Yeah, well, what is the nature of the group? It's just what you say it is. I mean, they got in fistfights with communists as if no one else ever did that. I mean, you're full of shit.
And the LaRouchites are a dangerous group. They go through different iterations. They rebrand themselves, but their tendency is very much to the right, very much to the far right. And as a consequence,
What does that mean? What does that even mean? Their tendency is to the far right. What does that even mean? I mean, this is, again, and who cares, right? If they're right wing, left wing, I mean, this is just silliness. Again, you can see that, right, that this is team sports to them. Left good, right bad. Not always, sometimes, but not always. Lately, it's the left that did Russiagate, folks. It's the left that sent the FBI to raid the homes of the Uhuru Three and drag them into federal court. It's the left that wants to impeach Trump because he's trying to make peace with Russia. Just because it's left doesn't make it good. But I guess in Brian's little tiny brain, it does.
Sometimes do things that people think, oh, that's good. They broke up AOC. They broke up AOC's meeting. Well, why?
They didn't break up AOC's meeting, actually. He got there and he asked a question. They did not stop AOC's meeting. They did not break up AOC's meeting. Like, where is he getting? He's just making shit up now. You know, I mean, you know, and then he broke up AOC's meeting, and then Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny came in and, you know, did a dance, and, you know, then some space aliens landed. Like, who broke up the meeting? No one broke up the meeting, Ryan. He should sue you for defamation. No one broke up any meetings. Someone got up and asked a pointed question to somebody who's sending weapons to Ukraine, which I've noticed the Party for Socialism and Liberation never did. And in fact, this is an important point. Until the LaRouche Organization and the Libertarian Party and the People's Party and the Center for Political Innovation called the Rage Against the War Machine rally, the Answer Coalition did nothing to oppose sending weapons to Ukraine. They didn't call a single rally to oppose the U.S. involvement in Ukraine until the Rage Against the War Machine rally happened. And then they were so embarrassed, a month later, they had to have their own little pathetic rally. So literally, they were doing the anti-war organizing that you won't do because you're sucking up to the Democrats so much. And we're supposed to not be okay with that because you got in a fist fight in the 70s. Not buying it, Brian. Not buying it.
Why did they do that? I mean, are they doing it because they're trying to move the country in a revolutionary direction and they want to overcome liberalism and create a mass socialist movement? That's not the LaRouchites.
Well, that's not, I mean, I don't see you doing that, right? I mean, I don't think that's what they want to do either. I think they wanted to stop World War III, and they didn't want, you know, American tax money to be funding a Nazi government in Ukraine and getting us closer to a nuclear war with Russia. I don't think they're trying to make a mass socialist movement. But if that's what they should be doing, Brian, why don't you and PSL do it? Show me one instance where PSL stands up to fucking liberals, right? If you disagree with CNN, if you disagree with MSNBC, you're the same as Hitler. You're a Nazi. The FBI went and raided the Uhuru Three and dragged them to jail just for being anti-war. Show me one instance where the Party for Socialism and Liberation functions as anything but the Democratic Party's woke cheering squad. Show me one instance of them protesting a Democrat.
Force. They're a politically reactionary force. And who they are does matter. And I think it's really weird and unfortunate for people to say, well, AOC has a bad position on the war, so let's support basically right-wingers who break up her meetings.
Again, what does right wing mean? Tell me about this right wing. It's my obligation to defend U.S. imperialism from. U.S. imperialism might be bad, but there's this other thing called the right wing that is even worse than U.S. imperialism. And so that's why, we should protect John Bolton, right? John Bolton's being arrested by Trump, who's right wing. I mean, this is the right wing. What is wrong with these people? He engages in an organization that does nothing but tail the Democrat Party. And I guess, to be a Democrat is 1,000 times better than being a Republican, even when the Republicans don't want World War III and want to protect our free speech and don't want to throw us in jail for wanting peace with Russia.
Just people should think about the consequences of that.
Yeah.
I think the LaRoucheites at different times reemerge as a factor. So I've known them literally now for 50 years as a tendency. And
do you think anything might have changed in 50 years? I was politically active during the Bush years. Things were totally different then. During the Bush years, to be right wing meant that you supported the wars, meant that you supported the Patriot Act, things have changed a lot in the 50 years of your life, Brian. I'm not trying to be ageist here, but you think anything has changed in 50 years? Anything? When I first got politically active in, 2004, 2005, the world was very, very different. And the political spectrum in the United States was very, very different. And you think anything might have changed? Do you think the role of different organizations, might have changed in the last 50 years? But it's like he's on autopilot. And that's how all of these boomer leftist, boomer communists are. They're on autopilot. Right wing bad, left wing good, right wing bad, left wing good, pander to liberals. Whatever liberals do, we say it louder. We say it louder. That's all they know how to do, right? They're completely brain damaged. And here, people that don't follow that script are actually opposing the war, and they're not. And they don't know what to do. It breaks their brains. They just have to engage in character assassination and call them Nazis.
It's very noteworthy that when they become stronger again, which is usually very short-lived, it coincides with some social or political crisis or in response to a movement or
that's all activist groups. Activist groups tend to emerge when there's divisions in society, when there's anger among the masses. You could say the same thing about PSL. When PSL gets stronger, say the same thing about Workers' World Party. You could say the same thing about every radical group. People tend to join radical groups when there's an upsurge, when there's a movement, and when everyone's happy. And in normal times, people don't join groups. This is a complete non sequitur, right? Like, they have an upsurge when there's division in society. Well, no fucking shit, Brian. No shit, Sherlock. He got him. He got him.
An embryonic mass movement forming, like in the anti-nuclear movement, they became an
embryonic mass movement. Is that like the Stop Trump rallies that Brian organizes? Is that embryonic? Is Black Lives Matter rallies that are being promoted on CNN? Is that embryonic? Right. That's a real movement from below. Right. John Bolton and Nancy Pelosi wanting to drive out Trump for wanting peace with Russia. That's a mass movement of the people right there.
Different times reemerge as a factor. So I've known them literally now for 50 years as a tendency. And it's very noteworthy that when they become stronger again, which is usually very short-lived, it coincides with some social or political crisis or in response to a movement or an embryonic mass movement forming, like in the anti-nuclear movement. They became a very big force attacking the anti-nuclear movement.
Good, because the anti-nuclear movement brought down the USSR. Socialist countries build nuclear power plants. Iran is fighting for its right to have nuclear energy. And the connection, the way Bernie Sanders and others were able to go over there and cultivate the Gorbachev wing of the USSR as assets and bring down the USSR was very bad, right? Opposing the nuclear movement, a movement that says there's too many people in the world and we just need to drive down the population. Technology is bad. A movement funded by the big oil companies. That was not a wrong thing to do.
1979, when it really looked like the anti-nuclear movement against the use of nuclear energy, which then expanded into the nuclear freeze movement, was going to become something powerful. They were openly pro-FBI.
No, they were not. The FBI threw them in jail, you lying sack of shit.
It threw it the whole 70s. They were for the...
No, they were not. The FBI prosecuted them and threw them in jail, which they never did to your organization because your organization just tailed the liberals, right? This is unbelievable. They're pro-FBI. Generally, pro-FBI groups don't get their homes raided by the FBI. They don't get dragged into federal court and charged with spurious financial charges. How can you say this? You know, Ramsey Clark, who worked with his organization, who I knew and I worked with at one point, Ramsey Clark even defended Lyndon LaRouche, right? So this is unbelievable. I mean, he's just a liar.
The FBI and the repression directed against progressive forces.
That's not the truth. They were not pro-FBI. The FBI threw them in jail. Meanwhile, you're pro-FBI because of the fact that Donald Trump is opposing the FBI. They had a massive lawsuit against the FBI. They sued the FBI. I mean, how can he just lie like this? They're pro-FBI. You're literally supporting the FBI rigged the elections against Trump. Did you sleep through that, Brian, where the FBI went to Facebook and Twitter and told them to suppress the Hunter Biden laptop story to make sure that Trump didn't win, and your people are out in the streets marching to remove Trump? Like, is your head on backwards, you fucking liar?
So I think they're very suspicious in my mind. I think they're a tool. I think that because they are a cult and they have a cult following.
What does that mean? They have a cult following, right? They're a cult. I mean, it's like so the reason LaRouche is bad is because we should all watch Netflix, right? Do they have a cult of personality like Fidel Castro and Stalin and Mao and Deng Xiaoping? You know, I mean, that's literally a term that comes from Khrushchev, right? Cult of personality was popularized by Khrushchev's secret speech. So watch a Netflix documentary to learn how bad Lyndon LaRouche is, right? I mean, this is just bottom scraping. I mean, this is unbelievable. They're a cult. They're a cult. So anyone that gets called a cult by mainstream media must be bad, right?
They're like an easy cadre that can be sort of moved into action or swept into action.
Yeah, right. Well, the PSL members are totally free thinking. All those college kids that you recruit for 1 or 2 years who then realize you have no plan to actually spread socialism among the masses, that you just run a protest hustle fundraising scam. You basically stage rallies and then go around the world with your hand out begging for money. You have absolutely no plan to win over the masses of people to socialism. I mean, all those 20-year-olds who join your group, they're all free thinkers, huh? Right? They're all free thinkers, right? All the 20-year-olds that join PSL, those are some brave, free-thinking people. I ought to put some videos on and show you how smart and free-thinking the PSL members are. Give me a break, right? But,
And I really think it's extremely important for the left or progressive forces not to be duped and not to collaborate in any way with the LaRouche forces. From time to time, they take a position that will seem anti-imperialist. They were opposing the U.S. invasion of Panama, for instance, in 1989. They made connections with Noriega. They became like friends of Noriega. So they kind of find their way. They sort of infiltrate into different areas of where there's political crisis, but people should really beware of them.
Yeah, I really hope people take that to heart because it is a bit disturbing to see like the level of. And it's mostly just online, but also like especially when it comes with like a cult, because it actually ruins people's lives.
Yeah, Jose's ruining people's lives, folks. Name one person who Jose has ever ruined their lives, right? And to think that man is the leader of any organization, to do what he just did on there. He equated a young man of color with the Ku Klux Klan, right? Rania just accused Jose of ruining people's lives. He played the cult of personality, the Khrushchevist cult of personality card, right? I mean, that's Brian Becker. If you want to know who Brian Becker really is, Jose did a heroic anti-imperialist act. And Brian Becker was so upset that somebody said something he pretends to agree with, that he did this podcast defaming them, right? That is what PSL is. That is what the Party for Socialism and Liberation is. just wanted to get that out of my system. That needed to be said. Anyhow, I don't see any more questions that have come in. So I think we'll probably end it here, unless anyone has any last minute questions. I will probably end this stream. But thanks you all for being here. We do great things. Join the Center for Political Innovation. It's time to intervene in the historical process. It's time to say, I am. It's time to stand up and oppose globalism, imperialism. Oh, someone sent a coffee. Rice said, good evening, Caleb. Will you be streaming the 80th anniversary victory parade occurring in Beijing at 9 a.m. Beijing time, which is about the same time, your time. That would be 9 p.m. though. It's 12-hour difference. The article by David Fox has now been published by the Great Southern Discussion Club. Have a good rest of the night. We are serious about changing direction in Australia. Well, the Great Southern Discussion Club is a tremendous group. That's David Fox, who gave a great talk at our convention. Is totally with us, and I'll drop that in the chat. That's very good stuff. I would go check out the Great Southern Discussion Club, gsdc.znn.au. Very, very good stuff. Very, very good stuff. Well, thank you, Rice, for raising that. And, we love the Great Discussion Club, and we will talk about the parade. I don't know if we're going to stream the parade on here. We might be able to do that. We'll definitely show some clips of it. I'm open to the idea of streaming the parade. We might do it. We'll definitely talk about it. And go check out David Fox's article. And Penny is saying I need to show the video of the Burkina Faso orchestra. So I will do that. All right. I'm doing that. I'm doing it, Penny. I will show the Burkina Faso orchestra while we're still here. I'll do it. I will do it. And it starts at 3:53, she says, right? Or no, that's where it ends. Okay, so I will just show the Burkina Faso orchestra. I'll do that. The first 4 minutes of the video you sent. So we'll put that on, right? Burkina Faso is great, right? Or is it a cult? Is it a cult of personality, right? This is why the Khrushchevism, the Khrushchevism book is so important, right? We have to just be prepared for this, right? That if you're a serious organization, if you're not just a liberal protest club, like PSL, if you're actually a serious organization, they're going to call you a cult, right? They called the Bolsheviks a cult. In case you didn't notice, they called the Bolsheviks a cult. They were not like other communist groups. They were like a monastic political order or a cult. They didn't practice open democratic, debate. They had people give the whole of their lives, right? Anyhow, we'll put on the orchestra. Burkina Faso, because they're, building a serious movement, they are empowering young people. And, this orchestra that performs in Russia, the Burkina Faso Youth Orchestra, it's really, really beautiful. So we'll put that on. We'll put that on. If anyone has any more questions, send them. But if not, after this is over, we'll probably end the stream. But anyhow, we will put that on. So hold on, hold your horses. Just gonna put this on. All right. We're gonna put the Burkina Faso, orchestra. Right. Okay. All right, here we go.
Africa, remember where we're coming from.
Greetings, families. Welcome back once again. I hope you are well. I hope your day is good. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. As you can tell, this video is about Burkina Faso, Moscow, the Burkina Bay, the tourism, the entertainment. Well, they were all in Moscow to celebrate International Military Music Festival. Come and see how they are enjoying it as if they understand what is going on. It's amazing. I thought the exchange of culture was only on paper. Many a times this like this is only on paper. You will not see it in reality, but this is happening live, just like everything that Russia is doing to support the AES. Families watch the entertainment, the dancing, everything. And I'll be back. Thank you so much for your time.
Let's head to Moscow, Russia, to watch the performance of the FASO Presidential Orchestra. On the sidelines of the International Military Music Festival in the Russian Federation, the orchestra moved, relocated to a park to be closer to the people. They connected with the people of Moscow through choreographies and sounds from Burkina Faso. These performances took place in the presence of the Minister of Culture and our special correspondent in Moscow, Amadou Marcel Touré.
When the esteemed orchestra of the Presidency of Faso, a truly remarkable musical ensemble, performs its captivating melodies in the various beautiful parks and other prominent public spaces throughout the vibrant city of Moscow, a profound and deeply artistic connection with the appreciative Muscovites happens almost instantly and quite remarkably. That's the case here at VDNKH, one of the largest exhibition and leisure complexes in the capital of the Russian Federation. With each performance presented, it is the cultural diplomacy between the two countries that is strengthened, according to the head of the Burkinabe delegation.
The orchestra of the presidency has once again demonstrated its ability to promote traditional Burkinabe values. We witnessed the harmonious blending of modern instruments with, of course, traditional Burkinabe instruments. These are instruments you don't find everywhere, but here we were able to showcase them to people who were very curious to discover this aspect of Burkinabe cultural heritage. In any case, we are very proud, we are very satisfied to have been able to share nearly 2 hours with this enthusiastic crowd, which was quite diverse, showing that culture in Russia is very much alive. It is also alive in Burkina Faso, and I think that by coming together, we will be able to build something very strong for our respective peoples.
A parade punctuated by performances throughout the park. The orchestra of the Presidency of Faso has continued to make a splash since its arrival in Moscow, and this immersion in the center allows it to open up even more to visitors and others.
So it must be said that the audience was completely won over. It is a population that has been charmed in more ways than one, and that was felt at every level. When Muscovites say "Maladechi, Maladechi," it's simply to say that you have touched their hearts, their sensibilities. And I think the orchestra has represented Faso with dignity.
To further strengthen cooperation between the Russian Federation and Burkina Faso, discussions have begun for Russia's participation in SMC 2026. In the meantime, the esteemed and highly talented orchestra of the Presidency of Faso continues to profoundly win the hearts and minds of the people through their captivating and culturally rich artistic creations that are distinctly and authentically Burkinabe, showcasing the vibrant spirit of the nation.
Thank you so much for watching. They look so nice, the clothes, the colors. I like everything. And for me, I'm happy that it's not on paper, but it's working. And very soon the Russians will also bring their...
Yeah, that's great. You know, that the young people are able to take up a musical instrument. You know, in Venezuela, they have a similar program where every young Venezuelan gets a musical instrument. It's really, really great. It's really, really tremendous. And, empowering young people, investing in communities. That's the kind of government we need, a government of action that'll fight for working families. Now, we do have another Rumble rant that's come in. And the question is, was the October crisis in Quebec by FLQ, which is the Quebec separatist group, was that a psyop? I will be honest with you, Hasib, I don't know enough about Canadian history to answer that question. I tend to have a positive view of the Quebec organizations, right? But I guess the October crisis, I'm looking at Wikipedia now, was in October of 1970. Members of the Front for the Liberation of Quebec kidnapped a prime minister, Pierre Laporte, and it was, there was a movement among the Quebec, those are the French-speaking people of Canada, and they, there was kind of an uprising, and, I tend to be sympathetic to anyone who wants to break apart an imperialist country. And if the people of Quebec very much felt they were super exploited, they were a colonized nation within Canadian borders. And there's a whole history of independence movements, et cetera, among the Quebecois. And I tend to think, and those movements tended to be aligned with the anti-imperialist camp. They tended to be aligned with China and the Soviet Union and such. So I tend to be sympathetic, but I actually don't know the history of that incident. I generally don't support any kind of terrorism, left adventurism, assassinations, or kidnappings or things like that. So I just don't know enough about the situation. I tend to be sympathetic with the Quebecois, but I just don't know the history of Canada enough to really answer, was it a psyop? I don't know. There were big divisions in the international ruling class at that time. I just don't know. And you're telling me what Matt Ehret says about it. Well, look, we can disagree about different things, and I bet the Quebecois were very pro-Palestine. I'm sure they were. No doubt about it. So, you're telling me Matt Ehret has his analysis of it. I don't know enough Canadian history. But there are divisions in the ruling class, and that there was, especially in the late 70s, more like it got going later in the decade. You had the Red Brigades in Italy. You had the Red Army faction in Germany, and there was a wing of the deep state that was supporting like left adventurous terrorism as a psyop. What happened with the years of lead in Italy was a counterinsurgency strategy. So, it's possible it could have been a psyop, but, this was in 1970. That was kind of before the intelligence agencies were starting to manipulate the different groups. I just don't know enough about it. But happy to answer. And thanks for sending your question. Happy to engage. And, I'm going to have to go read some Canadian history, but Matt is a friend. He does good work. And that's all I got to say about that. All right. I have to end it here because I've got a headache and it's getting late. But thank you, everybody. Thank you. And we'll be back. If not tomorrow, we'll be back later in the week. I'm always doing streams. So dare to struggle, dare to win, everybody. Join the Center for Political Innovation. We are the anti-imperialists and we're doing great work. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.